You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello and welcome to the 42 Cast, your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. As always, I am your host, Nathan, and we have another great episode lined up for you where we're going to talk about Season 3 of Stargirl. Before we do that, let's meet our cast for this week. So, starting off, she's been here with us to talk about all the previous seasons of Stargirl. She has her own podcast where she talks about the Legends of Tomorrow, and that is Jess. How are you doing, Jess?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, yeah, I'm doing okay. And so of course, Legends of Tomorrow sadly is no longer with us, and of course we're going to talk about the end of Stargirl here too.
Exactly.
Does it feel like it's all the walls are closing in on you?
A little bit, yeah. We're trying to come up with a new game plan. We still have the next season of Superman and Lois that we can go through. So after that, we'll see if that continues or not. I don't have high hopes. I think they're shuttering everything at the CW. So
the only thing I think is because the new DCU, the things that James Gunn is working on now aren't going to show up until like late 2024, that maybe Superman and Lois could get like another season in there before all that happens and they, sort of close up all the old projects. But they're probably just gonna, because I don't think that CW even like wants to do, the DC stuff anymore. So I have a feeling that like it's going to be canceled, but maybe
we'll see.
There's a chance. Yeah.
As of the time of this recording, we don't know those answers. So
right. Yes, those of you listening to this might have the answer, but we don't.
Future people listening.
Right. But yeah, how have things been going for you in general?
Other than that, we're good. Happy that it's a new year and a new fresh start. So we'll see how that goes. Just glad 2022 is behind us. So
all right. Well, it's good to have you back on the show, Jess.
Good to be here.
All right. And next up, he is the guy that absolutely loves comics. He still has Thanos on his couch, and that is Eric. How are you doing, Eric?
Yeah, when I can actually get the strip on schedule. Working way too much.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least you're making money, right?
It's true. Most of the time.
So,
whether or not I'm holding on to that money is a whole nother matter.
One step at a time.
Yes, it's true. I'm only mostly dead.
Oh, other than being mostly dead, anything else going on for you, Eric?
No, I'm still getting over a head cold, which is always fun. That's been this whole last week. So I'm mostly dead and almost over the weather. Under the weather.
Yeah, did it get really bad for you guys last week?
Weather-wise, I don't know.
Yeah.
The day, I have no idea. Dude, the days blend together at this point. It's not even funny.
No, okay. Yeah, last week it got really bad for us.
It got cold.
And I know, a lot of places.
I mean, we had like 3 inches of snow, but that's about it.
Yeah, no, we didn't get much snow. That's the thing. It got so cold. It got too cold to snow. That's the problem that we had. So yeah, we got a couple inches, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that it was like -10 outside. That was the problem. So yeah, not pleasant.
No, New England's been weirdly warm.
Oh, okay.
Well, George has been weirdly cold, and we had pipes bursting all over the place, and that has not been fun.
Yeah, I've been seeing the Facebook posts from lots of people about how bad things have been, down there. But
no snow, just cold.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I'm sorry that things have been kind of rough on you, but it's good to have you back on the show.
It's always good to be here. For you, I do most things. For you.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate it.
Within reason.
Right. All right. Well, finally, She is our resident cosplaying queen, and that is my lady life, Beth. How are you doing, Beth?
I'm doing well.
And what are you working on today, Beth?
Well, the last time I was on a podcast with you, I mentioned that we were going to the Goblin King's Masquerade in 6 days, and I'm not done with my dress, so I'm working on said dress. Basically a lovely velvety blue corset at the moment, and there'll be a skirt eventually, I hope, but that's all I got so far. But I'm just trying to keep it together because of the sign behind me that says sewing because murder is wrong.
So, anything else going on for you, Beth?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm a little bit stressed, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we did an escape room 2 days ago.
Yes, we did, and our oldest child committed murder, and I'm still not
Okay, I
over
think
it.
you need to give a little context to that.
But at the same time, I don't want to give like spoilers for whatever this room, because I don't know like if it's something that is also in other locations or whatever. But basically,
I mean, you can be generic about it.
I don't know how I can be generic because of how the situation is. Okay, so you're trying to get into this house because your little friend has hit his baseball into the window of the neighbor's house, and he went in there to get it, but he didn't come out. So we're going into the house after him, only to find out that the neighbor's an alien and has turned our friend Brian into a brain in the jar. And at the very end, it's like, oh, I guess I can't play baseball anymore. And then a panel pops open on the wall that says, kill brain, yes or no. And the child just goes, yes, no hesitation whatsoever, and kills the brain.
Love it.
She did feel bad about it, though, once she heard all the screaming and commotion that it caused. But she was like, oh, I maybe shouldn't have done that. And I'm just like, no, honey, you shouldn't. That's going to stick with me for the rest of my life.
Wow. Okay, Beth.
Oh.
That's a bit much. But yeah, no, it was funny, and it was funny how quickly she just hit the button because I saw the panel pop open and I was like, oh, and then she just hit it before I could say anything or do anything. Just 'cause she was right next to it. And I was like, oh,
the processing
wow, okay.
speed on that child is unholy.
Yeah. So anyway, she's always trying to do like if there's like a twisted solution to something, she'll try doing that just to see like what reaction it provokes. So
yeah.
What happens?
Right.
I've got one of those too. It's okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, it is always great to have you back, Beth.
Thanks for having me. Also, sorry, Brian.
I was like, wait, who's Brian? I remembered.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian is brain. So anyway. You know what time it is now? It's time for our 5-minute controversy. And for those of us joining us for the first time, a 5-minute controversy is just when we kind of loosen up before we talk about our actual topic. And we talk about something that's going on in the geekosphere, gives you a little insight into how we feel about it. And this time, not super controversial. It's a little bit in a different direction. But of course, the controversy itself is the fact that since DC has decided to put a head over their movie and TV projects and everything, there have been some ruffled feathers, to create a cohesive vision. They're obviously having to cut away a lot of the things that had been going on, some things that even fans were very much behind. And one of those things is Henry Cavill as Superman, because while there have been mixed reactions to the movies that he's actually appeared in as Superman, most people are pretty much okay with him playing the role of Superman. But Gunn, understandably to my mind, and we're not going to get into all the, ins and outs of what's going on, what we know, what's rumored and all that, but understandably to my mind, he kind of wants to start over with a young Superman. And I kind of get building up from the ground, from the bottom, and building up this new DC universe. But because of that, though, a casualty is, of course, Henry Cavill playing Superman, because I don't know how old he is, but you can't really have him as a young, just starting out Superman anymore. It's been a decade since he started playing the role anyway. So of course, a lot of people are speculating like, oh, Marvel should just snatch him up and put him in something for Marvel. So my question, starting off, is what role would you put Henry Cavill in for the MCU. So, Beth, why don't we start off with you on this one?
You know, when you asked me this a couple days ago, I kind of just sat there and stared off into the distance. Like, you could tell I was computing a response, but wasn't quite there yet. And
it was like that.
It was hilarious. But as soon as it popped in my head, I was like, this is it. He has to be Scott Summers.
All right, why would you like him as Scott Summers?
Okay, so here's how my brain went.
And that's Cyclops for those of you at home that don't know the real names of the X-Men.
Oh, you silly man. I started thinking like who could he play? Because he's like just a do-gooder, you know, big strong guy. And then I started going down the X-Men list and I went, oh, a do-gooder, a Boy Scout. Hi, Cyclops.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they'll make him likable for once. I don't know. That would be nice.
Make Henry Cavill Cyclops because we want to like Cyclops. I like that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't ask your reasoning before. You just told me your pick, and so I didn't know your reasoning. So, all right, I like that. I like that a lot more now, knowing that's your reasoning. It's like people like Henry Cavill. So if you want to like Cyclops, make Henry Cavill Cyclops.
Exactly.
Okay. All
and
right,
I can also see him with the visor, which doesn't hurt. But like, Cyclops is a putz.
Yeah. Okay, Jess, what do you think?
I've been trying to mull this over, and my Marvel lore is a bit weaker than my DC lore, but just because, like, I mean, I do love Henry Cavill, don't get me wrong, and he does often play a Boy Scout character, but for that reason, I'd like to see him play something opposite. So I'd like to see him as a villain of some kind, but maybe not one, you know, that's super like masked up, because, you know, it's Henry Cavill and people want to look at him. So, but I don't know like what villain that would necessarily be like on the Marvel side that, you know, that hasn't, or maybe one that like hasn't been done. I didn't know if we were recasting or just like future casting. So
no, I meant like anything that hasn't been taken yet, like something that could conceivably, you know, be done in a movie in the next couple, you know, few years, you know, kind of thing. So yeah. So.
I mean, I'd kind of like to see him as a villain. I think it could be fun. I know that this has been cast and recast like a million times, but I don't know. It could be fun as Magneto, sticking with the X-Men route. But I know that's kind of already technically taken. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, like the rumors are saying Giancarlo Esposito is Magneto, but I don't know.
I love that too.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, yeah, I would love that. I think he would be great for it, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know that that's real or not. We know that Marvel has spoken to him, and he has admitted that Marvel has spoken to him about several roles, including Magneto, but we don't know that that was what eventually, you know, came out of that. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, because wasn't the Giancarlo thing, wasn't it actually leaning more towards Xavier? I kept hearing that more than Magneto. I kept hearing people go, no, they've actually, like, it's been rumored that they're talking to him about possibly being Charles and not Eric.
That'd be interesting too.
Which I think would be a really cool choice.
Well, no, I know they did talk to him about playing Xavier. For some reason, I thought that he said that he personally was leaning towards Magneto, but maybe I've Swiss cheesed that. Maybe I've gotten that. But anyway, that's not Henry Cavill, yeah. So it's nothing to do with Henry Cavill.
What's interesting with what Jess said is, like, I can picture Henry Cavill with that evil glint in his eye. I think he could be an amazing villain.
Right? I think so.
I was wondering if somebody was going to go with the villain, but yeah, the question is what villain.
Yeah, and that's where I'm a little weak when it comes to the Marvel side of things. So let me do some quick Googling while Eric gives his response.
All right, Eric.
Oh no, I was gonna help Jess. It's like he's Mephisto.
Please.
He's totally Mephisto.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic. No one is Mephisto. We will never get Mephisto, and if Sacha Baron Cohen is actually doing it, I'm all on board, but that's a whole nother matter. But no, I just felt like throwing that out there because, you know, everybody's Mephisto the second anything pops up on...
That is true. That is
God,
true.
all the constant rumors about Mephisto. Oh, God.
So many that I even know who that is.
And people get mad that they haven't done it, and it's just
know.
yeah, it's like, guys, they were never gonna. I mean, it would have derailed WandaVision.
Yeah,
to make
really
it Mephisto as the one. It's like and then they thought it was going to be Loki because the kid pointed to the picture of the devil in the church, and they were like, "Oh, like it's Mephisto," and it's like, no, it's not. Then She-Hulk. People thought it was She-Hulk. People thought he was in Multiverse of Madness. People thought he was. Anyway, but okay, that's funny. That's funny. Henry
Turns out
Cavill.
he's actually behind all of the movies since the day one. They just don't want to tell us yet.
All right, Eric, what's your pick?
That's basically what Jason Aaron's been doing in the comic books anyways right now with the Avengers. Mephisto's behind everything, so wouldn't it be surprising if the MCU did it? Anyways.
Please don't do that, MCU. Please don't.
I have technically two. One that isn't going to surprise Nathan because Henry Cavill himself has been talking about it for ages. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if they did it, it would be fun. But with Peggy Carter around in a variant, they might not even touch Captain Britain, because that's the most obvious one, is him playing Brian Braddock, especially with the X-Men on the verge of eventually showing up. It would be a fun nod to have Brian show up just around the same way.
I feel weird about Henry Cavill as a blonde, though. I mean, it just seems weird to me. But
oh, okay. You're gonna hate my second pick then.
Okay.
Everybody's been talking about the Superman analogs for Marvel, and there's been rumors for the Thunderbolts and who they might be going after. And one of those rumors is everybody's favorite, not multiple personality, but sadly very depressed. And if his evil side gets out, Bob goes a little crazy with the Void. So yeah, I'm going with the Sentry, because I think Henry Cavill is the perfect actor to tackle someone like Bob and the serious nature behind the mental health analog that is the Sentry, and how, somebody's darker aspects of their personality take over. You get the Void, and you get the whole mess. And I think Henry Cavill's the perfect kind of actor to tackle something like that. I do not think they have to use the stupid blonde hair, though, because you don't need the full, thick blonde hair look. You can just do short buzz cut Bob, too, because they've done that in the comics before. But everybody talks about the evil Superman analogs. It's like, no, just go with the interesting Superman analog for Marvel. You don't have to go with freaking Hyperion.
I just don't know. Like Marvel comes to him and he's like, so you couldn't play Superman, for DC, but here, come play a Superman ripoff. I just don't see that being a selling thing. Like, I think they have to offer him something like, I think they have to offer him something very different, You didn't see the stupid Snyder cultists going, oh yeah, Marvel should get Affleck, her, and Cavill, and they should do the squad. It's like, no, they're not going to do the squadron like that. That's not something that Feige would do. Well, it's not something that Feige would do, and I think that they would be insulted to be like, oh, so we're just going to play ripoffs of characters that we've already played, for Marvel's version of this is the Justice League, So, I just don't see it. Anyway, so Captain Britain.
I love Captain Britain. I do. I love Brian.
No, I actually like Captain Britain too.
Yeah.
I if they go for Captain Britain, and I would really love for them to go weird and go with the Alan Davis stuff.
Yes.
But
dear God, yes.
But yeah, that's the thing. Because to me, like, that's what makes Captain Britain different. Because there's lots of people who can fly and have super strength, but like, if you want, I would want them to go weird. But yeah, I don't know if that's on the, like, I feel like with all the X-Men stuff they got, they're gonna be busy with a lot of the more like common X-Men stuff before they ever get into Excalibur and all the Excalibur stuff. So I don't know, but maybe they've surprised me before. Guardians of the Galaxy was a surprise when they pulled that out, as early as they pulled it out. So they could.
And the fact that they seem that, the fact that Captain Carter has gained the prominence that she has, I could easily see her jumping into live action with all the animated what if stuff they've been doing with her. I can
Right,
easily see them sliding her over and completely just
Well, but
nullifying Captain
although I
Britain.
will say very specifically though, they don't call her Captain Britain. They call her Captain Carter. They very consistently call her Captain Carter.
Yeah,
So,
but that's why I'm saying, like, I can see them kind of hybridize, like they've been doing with characters on and off throughout the MCU so far, and kind of nullifying Captain Britain.
yeah, I just, and again, I don't know a lot about the character, but the fact that his introduction was also a huge retcon makes me hate Sentry. The idea that, oh, he was actually the one that saved them every time and all the old classic Lee Kirby stuff. Like, he defeated Galactus and, you know, all this stuff. And I was like, but our memories were all erased to not know that he ever existed. And now, you know, I got so mad when I heard about that. And it's like,
There's been 3 other retcons of that retcon, so it's not even a retcon anymore.
Okay, because, like, that's the thing. I don't want them to be like, oh, actually, he's the one that defeated Thanos. And, you know, Tony dying was completely something else or whatever. Like, but our memories were erased, and I don't want Sentry. I don't want Sentry.
I'll make one more sentence that's gonna drive you insane when it comes to the Sentry, and then obviously we'll move on to what I know.
Be careful, because I have to deal with him after the podcast. Don't break him.
He may or may not have been one of the 4 horsemen of apocalypse at one point. Anyways. Yep.
All right.
I had to do it. I'm sorry, Nathan. I had to do it to you.
All right. So, yeah, with Cavill, you know, like, because, you know, like, my initial thought, this is before we got the official word that he was out in DC months ago, back before we thought he was back because of Black Adam, and then he was out again. I had already been thinking about this, like, oh, who would he play for Marvel? And my initial thought, because he's played a Russian before, and because he has such a big strapping physique, was Colossus. And I was like, he would make a very interesting Colossus, because Colossus is also a very outgoing, you know, very, you know, like, but also very big, broad, you know, like, kind of character. And I was like, and he can do the Russian accent. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like, maybe that would be good. But I've been thinking a lot lately, and I'm like, I really would like to go somewhere else, because, like, of course the natural thought would be someone big and strong, you know, for Henry Cavill, because he is a guy in very excellent shape and everything. To Jess's point, I've heard a lot of people calling for him to be Doctor Doom. I think he's the worst choice for that, especially because they would have to keep him, like, in a helmet. You know,
Exactly.
it's just like, you kind of lost the appeal with Henry Cavill among a lot of the female fans. But
I can't hear that accent coming out of him.
Oh,
like,
well, no, and that's,
version of Doom's accent.
it's like, I like Henry Cavill, but I think Doom is going to require, like, a very, very strong character actor. I think that's what they need. That's why Giancarlo Esposito is I actually hoped he would be Doom, because I was like, that would be my dream cast for him, because he is such a good actor that I feel like he could do all, like, emote with Doom completely enclosed with no, you know. But anyway, again, we're getting away from Henry Cavill.
So I was gonna say, I did really like your suggestion when you pointed out the Reed Richards thing. I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh, that would actually be kind of fun. I could see him doing it.
But that was but suddenly I just had an epiphany where I was like, oh yeah, because, like, basically all the rumors are saying that Krasinski and Multiverse of Madness, that wasn't a permanent thing. That was just for that particular Earth or whatever. And so I was like, what about Henry Cavill? Yeah, well, yeah. What about Henry Cavill for Reed Richards? I was like, and the more I thought about it, and the more that I looked at him, and the more I imagined him with the graying temples and a pipe in his mouth, I was like, he kind of has the face for, like, you know, he looks like he could be, like, I feel like he would need to slim down for the role a bit. But, you know, actors have done that before. You know, I mean, like, Christian Bale, like, slimmed down to, like, 90 pounds to do The Machinist, and he wouldn't need to slim down anywhere near that much. So, like, yeah, he would need to slim down a little bit, because I don't want Reed to be, like, a guy that's a really, you know, like muscly, you know, kind of guy. But yeah, I was like, and I feel like, again, like, I feel like he could do that. You know, I feel like he could pull off that role, and maybe, you know, kind of help with the fact that, you know, again, audiences tend to not connect with Reed with the few times they've tried it before. Like, most people tend not to like him very much. So I'm like, people like Henry Cavill, so well-written script, you know, and him as Reed Richards, I think that might work. So yeah, that's my pick for it. All right. Well, apparently mine wasn't that controversial. All right. But yeah, that's our 5-minute controversy for this time. And like we mentioned, we're going to talk about Stargirl Season 3. But before we do that, let's pause for a moment for a promo from another fine podcast.
Check out the Modern Musicology podcast, where each week we talk about things like
what makes a great drummer,
our favorite rock documentaries,
songs we love by artists we don't love,
our favorite concert memories,
songs that should have been singles,
and all of our favorite music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now.
Do not use Modern Musicology if you're allergic to it. Modern Musicology may produce itching, dizziness, vertigo, temporary blindness, or heart palpitations. Do not taunt Modern Musicology.
Ask your doctor about switching to Modern Musicology.
And we're back. And like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we are talking about Stargirl Season 3. And this is kind of interesting to me because I think this is the only time where I've done 3 seasons of a show in a row with the same exact cast all 3 seasons. It has always changed with at least one person somewhere in a 3-season span. So this is pretty cool. We all get to come back together and talk about the 3rd season of Stargirl. So just, starting off, because we've done this before, we don't need to know about backgrounds with characters or anything like that. What was your overall thought on, about season 3? How much did you like it, and just whatever at the high level, and then we'll get into like specifics. So Eric, why don't you start us off?
The overall season was fantastic, but as I promised you, slightly fun related rant. Listen, if you want something to be a twist, don't have the actor act psychotic from scene 1.
It was
Just
a bit of
saying.
a problem. I kept talking with Beth about it because the problem that I had, and I guess this is getting a little into specifics before we were going to get into specifics, but the problem that I had was this. Because it was like, I was like, man, this seems like there's something wrong with Starman. Like there's something seriously, deeply wrong. But Pat, Pat hasn't said anything like, wow, like Sylvester's just acting strange or whatever. And like Pat, the person who knows him, who has been with him since he was, since Sylvester was a teenager, who should know him incredibly well, is just not even blinking at the way he's been. So I'm like, was he always like this? Are they trying to tell us that he was always kind of like this loose cannon, somewhat, crazy
Unhinged?
kind of guy?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. On edge, I and that was the thing. I was like, so maybe that's what they're trying to tell us. So to me, it like gave a little bit of uncertainty just because of that. But now in hindsight, I'm like, why in the world wasn't Pat like, oh my God, what is going on here? Because that just makes no sense to me now.
Yeah,
But,
well, okay. So like on that particular point, I do feel like, because we harped on this a lot as well, that we didn't understand what they were doing with Starman. Like, why was he such an over the top jerk? Like it felt out of character a
Mhm.
bit. And so like we're like, okay, is he always kind of this way? Like maybe he was always this way. And that's kind of like the progression we ended up talking ourselves into until we ultimately get that reveal. Is just like, I mean, Pat kind of, well, he rolled with it, right? And I was
Right.
like, maybe he's far enough removed that he's not remembering exactly how Sylvester was. And we are led to believe, that the eventual person that we figure out who Starman is, that he's an incredibly good like mimic and actor. And there's, just there was a little bit of question of, does he have his telepathic abilities? Like I believe he has in the comics. And so we were trying to like sort of sort that one out, because we feel like him being able to fool Pat was kind of like what hinged their entire like disguise on, basically, or mirage, or however you want to phrase that.
All right. Yeah. I kind of want to put a pin on this because I kind of want to like
Sorry.
talk about this a little deeper. But yeah, we will come back to this. We will circle back to this because I think there's even deeper issues with this particular storyline. But yeah, Jess, what were your thoughts on this season?
I mean, we thought that it started out a bit slow. I mean, really, it was kind of a cool concept at first, and then they just kept dragging it on and very obvious misdirections for like who the murderer really was. And then when you kind of get the reveal on that and you realize that like that whole like clue like murder mystery kind of storyline was just like a huge MacGuffin and they kind of went nowhere with it, that got to be like a little confusing. But the whole reveal at the end, like towards the end of this season was, I mean, it puts the entire beginning of that season in a completely different light. So I haven't had a chance to go back and rewatch it, but I really want to go back and rewatch it knowing what I know now, because I think some of those things that were a little bit more glaring will be less glaring on a second watch. So, but I really enjoyed it overall.
All right, Beth.
I've been thinking about this. If I could rate on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 7. There were definitely some parts where I felt like something was just off the whole time, and I really can't put my finger on why I felt that way. Like it definitely could have been better, obviously, is what I'm trying to say. Like it's definitely not the worst thing I've ever seen, because let's put that aside. I don't know where my brain was going just then. Things could always get worse, but in this case, it definitely could have been better. So as nebulous as I could be, I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
You just had me wondering what you were going to say was worse.
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
want to Walker Independence.
I thought you were going to say Walker Independence. We watched exactly one episode, and we're like, yeah, no.
I haven't seen any of it.
Don't.
Not
You
my
don't
thing.
need to.
I like Kat McNamara, so I was like, I liked her in Arrow and on The Flash, and I was like, I'll give her a try because I don't watch.
Yeah, we'll
Walker
support the actress,
either,
but not that hot mess. No.
Right, but I was like, yeah, that show is awful. So yeah, no. But
the two best episodes of the season had nothing to do with the main plot, so just throwing that out there.
yeah, the one that was for
Infinity.
the intended spin-off show that they're not going to do, because Jeff Johns said, like in an interview recently, like, oh yeah, that was totally to be a spin-off, show for Infinity Inc. And because of the CW and what's going on now, like not only did they not get renewed for Stargirl, but no Infinity Inc. spin-off.
And I would have been all for that. I would have been like, I'm all in. You can have all my money. Take it. Let's do this. Because the shade. I love the shade.
Oh,
Yes.
not even just the shade. The second you mentioned Sandy to me, I'm all in. Sandy is my favorite member of the modern JSA. Sand, that guy's been through so much. If you look up his modern costume, the costume that he started using that was based on Wesley's, he's got this full gorgeous trench coat, this awesome gas mask, and this beautiful fedora that looks like basically like a modern day version of Sandman, and it's gorgeous. And just all the stuff that Sandy has gone through, you throw his name out there and you don't give him to me, that is one of the biggest, worst teases you could do to a fanboy like me. I was like, Jeff Johns, you're a jerk and I hate you. How dare you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that the cancellation of this show is one of the most disappointing things that has come out, I think from this the CW getting, I mean, it's a combined issue. It's the fact that Warner was bought by Discovery and the CW was bought by Nexstar, because in the case of Legends of Tomorrow and Batwoman, it was actually Warner Discovery that canceled them. The CW wanted to renew them, and they were like, no, it costs too much money for the studio space. We'll just stop making it. And so I don't know with Stargirl whose decision it was. But
But we
whatever.
hate you for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes,
But
we do.
But the thing is, like a lot of these shows that have been canceled recently, it's like, okay, like they've had a good run. Like, Supergirl had a good run, Black Lightning had a good run, Legends had a good run, Batwoman also was kind of cut short, but it didn't hold the promise I think that Stargirl does, because I mean Batwoman also kind of unfairly, because Ruby Rose left and they're kind of left with having to like juggle that. Like Batwoman's been kind of a mess since the beginning. And so kind of more understandable that one got canceled, but like Stargirl has done nothing wrong.
I know.
It is so unfortunate because there's so much potential and it is so well acted. And even though I had some script problems with some of the episodes this season, like the fact the stories and the way that the characters are treated and the acting of the actors is so good that it can make up for that sometimes some of the scripts don't quite live up to their potential. And that's what makes this so unfortunate to me, because I feel like both this and if Infinity Inc. was going to be all the same people, which it seems like it would have been from like behind the scenes kind of thing, like I feel like this could have spawned a new Arrowverse type interconnected universe of multiple shows set within this version of the DC universe, and I would have liked to have seen that.
I'm gonna go ahead and call it the Starverse, just so
the
we have
Starverse
terminology.
No, I
Yeah.
like that.
I've
Yeah,
stamped
exactly.
it, but it exists now. You're welcome.
And I'm going to feel the same way if this is the last season of Superman and Lois, because I think that show has the same.
Yeah.
And that's the sad thing is, like, now at the end, they were coming out with these 2 new shows that were so good. And now well, we know Stargirl is done, and I have this bad feeling Superman and Lois is done, but we'll see.
I know.
But yeah, so as far as my overall thoughts, I feel like this season started out really good, and I really liked the mystery aspect until we got to like the last couple of episodes, and I felt like it all fell apart. Like, not the acting of the actors, but I feel like the writing like all fell apart. That it was like Jess mentioned, I felt like the whole mystery aspect was, I didn't feel like, oh, like if I had just put the pieces together, I feel like it was like, oh, aha, audience, like, with we've completely just pulled out, something out of nowhere to like say aha, but it wasn't something that if you had followed along, you could have pieced it together yourself, kind of thing. And I didn't like that, and I felt like there was a lot in the final episode that didn't make a lot of sense. Story and plot wise with everything that we've seen up to this point. So I just felt like it kind of fell apart at the end, which I felt like was kind of disappointing. But then of course we got the tease for the next season that we're not going to get to, and that was frustrating, where it's just like, no. It's nice to see John Wesley Shipp in the shade, but I kind of almost wish that they had just not and just ended the season, rather than, but I also get the idea of, no, we want to show that like there was so much, like the characters continued even though the show isn't, and I kind of get like the sort of like trying to leave things that way, but this leaves me with like this gaping hole, in my heart.
That only fanfic can fill.
Yeah.
That's how I took it though. Like when they left everything with like the Shade and the Flash, I felt like that was, oh look, but the adventures continued, like adventures to be continued, like they're still going on.
Oh, right, but I know that they had a plan for the next season that would have led into if they had been renewed. So that's the part where I just feel like, oh, like that makes me sad, because there was.
See, I felt like all the other parts that were what the Shade was telling us, the story of how they rescued Starman and blah blah blah. I felt like that was the season that we didn't get.
Right.
Because there is a huge time jump. Why would there's no way they would have done a 10-year time jump otherwise.
No. They were, the Flash came from the past to bring the Shade to do something. Like they were going to go back in time. Like that was the setup for the next season.
I gotcha. See, I don't think we ever would have got those final scenes if they hadn't canceled it. I think that's what they tacked on. But
oh no, Jeff Johns had said specifically that they did film 2 versions, but he said it's the same. The scene is the same, the setting is the same, and the characters are the same, but their dialogue was slightly different, like in the 2 different versions. So in some way, we were still going to get that flash forward to the museum, and there was going to be the Shade and the John Wesley Shipp Flash. And I don't know what the dialogue difference would have been if they had been renewed, but it would have been, I think probably would have been a little bit more obvious that they were going back in time to do something with the JSA in the past. But yeah, that was,
I feel like that scene would have been completely out of place had it not been canceled. So I think that was a very strange choice, and they're lucky they got canceled then, because I feel like that would have been a terrible ending. Otherwise, that would have made no sense. Why would they jump into the future like that? I don't know. I don't agree. I don't agree with that stylistically at all. But anyways.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about the thing then that we've been talking about a little bit that Eric brought up about Starman. in this season. Because like we already mentioned, the reveal left a little something to be desired. It seemed like that wasn't the direction they were going with the story, and it seemed kind of like out of left field when they were kind of like, oh no, like it's Starman all along. But so here's my bigger issue with it than just the fact that he was acting out of character, and yet nobody seemed to, even Pat didn't seem to notice, the person who actually knows him really well. So if we all recall, at the end of season 2, Courtney is fighting Eclipso, and Starman shows up and grabs the staff, and like his connection with the staff is like what helps like drive like Eclipso like out of Courtney. But the explanation they gave this season is that he didn't have a connection with the staff yet until he convinced Courtney that he was the one that deserved the staff, and that's what gave him the connection with the staff. So how then do we explain season 2 when he shows up already having a connection with the staff without having to convince Courtney of anything? And it seems like at that point at season 2, they didn't have the whole Ultra-Humanite idea like thought up at that point, and that was something that they've just like made up in season 3, because like that doesn't work for me now. Like the whole thing with him showing up and helping save the day at the end of season 2, it's just like, no, because like the staff would have rejected him knowing that that wasn't really Sylvester. So yeah, I have real problems. He's even showing Courtney like tricks and stuff of like, this is how you use the staff, and it's like, how did he do that before? Because he should have had to convince Courtney before showing her. Like, I don't know. I feel like the whole explanation doesn't make sense, and I have real problems with like the whole Ultra-Humanite in Sylvester's body because of the way they set it up. If it had been more like he was hesitant to hold the staff again in the beginning, and like they had set that up better, I think that would have helped immensely with selling what they gave us at the end of the season. So Beth, you haven't really commented on this one. So what did you think about the whole Sylvester, the whole arc with Sylvester specifically?
Yeah, the glaring pothole you're mentioning, yeah, I had a hard time with that as well after the fact, but just the whole, I don't know, there were certain parts of the season, that's the word I'm looking for. There was just something about this season that just felt weird. And I know that they wanted to do a murder mystery, and I'm all for a murder mystery, but when they reveal it as something that you couldn't have possibly have guessed as a viewer, that's just a slap in the face. Like, give us something to figure out from that. And then with Sylvester acting the way he does, I never really thought that he could have been Starman, but of course, we had no explanation for why he was acting like such a jerk. And I feel like I'm just echoing what everyone else has said at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it was the Pat thing, and the fact that the staff accepted him were the two things where I kept talking myself out of it being Sylvester. Because otherwise, I would have gone straight to Sylvester. But I don't feel like they explained those things to my satisfaction. They've never even explained the Pat part at all. Like, why did Pat accept him?
Yeah, maybe when he said that he convinced Courtney that he could have the staff, maybe it's more of like, superficially, like she saw him, oh, that's Starman, here, use this. Maybe it was that superficial level that seeing him made her think that it was really him. And but that's like a really bad explanation, so yeah.
I mean, I've got thoughts. I've got an explanation from like my perspective, but I don't know if you want me to jump in yet.
Yeah, jump in.
So I agree. Like it did seem a little bit weird, but here's how I've been able to, I don't know if it's headcanoning or whatever, like given like what they've presented us, that because it's like Starman's like body and like physiology, right? He does still have like a physical connection with the staff, but in order to get like more of like an unbreakable bond, he basically had to have Courtney lessen or loosen her bond like from the staff. So that was kind of like how I took it. Like it was more of like, yes, they're both physically able to like connect with the staff, and that's why he was able to come in at the end of season 2 and still do what he was able to do, and then they were able to kind of like have him doing that throughout the season. And I don't know, maybe they didn't get to explain, they didn't explain a lot about like the Ultra-Humanite's abilities, but I mean, I think in the comics he does have like telepathic abilities, so And we know that Sylvester's brain is still active and alive. So that we were wondering if he had used that to like gain those abilities and understand like how the staff works as part of like convincing everybody that like he was Starman. Because I mean, he had his moments where like he did good things, and then of course he had his moments where he was just manipulating everyone, you know, to really divide them without them realizing that's what he was doing. But in the end, like that's how I was able to kind of like talk myself into the like the physical connection was there because the physiology was correct, even if like the brain was technically different. I mean, we can get into, I mean, that's comic book science. We got to wave that away, but
right. But I guess my problem with that is, you know, as somebody who's not really that knowledgeable about DC other than like the cartoons that I watched when I was a kid, like since they never said the Ultra-Humanite had telepathic ability, you're basically invoking something that was never said on screen.
Yeah, they never said it. No, I know. That's why I said it was kind of like a headcanon that we used to make it work for us, like on our podcast. But yeah, they didn't actually ever say it.
He has minor telepathy, sort of like his telepathy works more like Kilgrave, the Purple Man from Marvel. So like he has sway over people
Okay.
versus actually full on like mind control. So it's not like what's his name from season 1?
Brainwave.
Brainwave, yep. It's not like Brainwave. It's much more of like a power of suggestion. That's why like we see a lot of what Sylvester does is kind of like saying the right thing to Rick or Beth or Yolanda to kind of like sway them enough to get them on the wrong path. So it's more of like a power of suggestion versus full on mind control, if that makes sense.
Right, but can he read it? Like, can he read information
No.
from somebody? Okay, so
No,
then that takes
yeah.
that takes that off the table. So again, I just felt like that whole thing didn't work, and it's bad because like the performance was great, and even the performance once it's revealed that he's the Ultra-Humanite, like the whole like sort of crazy thing while he's burying Pat. I was like, that was really good. Like
That
the
was
whole thing
cool.
of like, yeah, like it was disturbing. It really felt like, oh man, like this guy is totally nuts at this point. And it was the acting was so good, and I loved him, and I loved his all the quiet moments he had with everyone before that was all really good. And the chemistry and all that was good, but yeah, I just felt like the writing just like fell apart in the last 2 episodes. It was such.
If the writers have to rely on Jess's headcanon, then there's something wrong in the writers.
No, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
An explanation.
I was just trying to say how
No
I made it
offense
work
to
for
Jess.
me.
In an interview, Jeff Johns said, "Well, in my head canon."
Right.
All right, but yeah, Eric, any more thoughts on any of this?
Well, I think one of the issues with the writers' room is, and I haven't done enough research to 100% prove this, but I don't think James Robinson was as heavily as involved as he was in season 2 and the back half of season 1, which I think you can see a lot, you know, being the fact that Richard Swift, you know, everybody's favorite, The Shade, because who doesn't love The Shade, is in there for maybe like 40 minutes of the season at most, which is the most depressing thing in the world because he's one of the best characters on the show. But like, I don't know if it's maybe a factor of his schedule was too busy, or like, because you could tell a lot of his voice and a lot of the stuff he was doing, especially that made season 2 so strong, was kind of like almost not necessarily ripped away for lack of a better terminology, but like you could tell a lot of that foundation that we got that made season 2 so strong was kind of like dissipated in season 3, which I think is definitely one of the overall weaknesses of the season. Like I said, I don't know 100% for a fact if that means that James wasn't as actively as involved, but that's definitely what it felt like, at least to me. You get someone with such a strong voice completely out of the writer's room, and that you can tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I feel like now that I know that they were planning a spin-off show, the Shade's disappearance makes more sense to me, that maybe they were just like, well, he won't be in this season of Stargirl, but if we do make Infinity Inc., like he'll be a main character, and so he'll be, very, like very integrated into that, and we'll see a lot of him. I don't know if that was part of their thought process either, but it did, like, I remember talking to Beth about it when he first disappears, and I'm like, oh, so season 2 ends with I'm gonna stick around, and then it's like, oh nope, I've done that, bye, and I'm just like,
I'm
what
out.
was this bait and switch? Because like, yeah, I was expecting him to be around a lot in season 3, and we barely get him at all, and it was awful.
Yeah.
The thing about the overall plot of the season, though, that I will say, and there is when we touch on Rick's journey in a little bit, because I'm sure you want to talk about Rick's journey in a little bit, but it's the overall plot. It structurally, like the skeletal structure of the overall plot with the Ultra-Humanite and everything, that is taken directly from Volume 5 of that first Jeff Johns JSA run, where called Stealing Thunder, in which and this is something that everybody should be glad didn't happen. So when Jakeem gets the Thunderbolt, Johnny Thunder is the one that was taken over by the Ultra-Humanite, tricks Jakeem into giving him back the Thunderbolt, and then the Ultra-Humanite is able to modify and change the world with a wish to kind of like bring everybody under his thumb and corrupt the world into like insane degrees where he's got control over like Superman, Batman, Power Woman, like basically the whole superhero community is under his control. So like you can see the skeletal structure of that kind of modified and changed into what we got here, where it's the cosmic rod stolen from Stargirl pretty much, instead of the Thunderbolt being taken from Jakeem, which, like I said, we should be glad definitely didn't happen this season, because that would have been a hell of a lot more messier.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah. I think next, though, since we've all brought up the shade, let's just talk about the Infinity Inc., because the Infinity Inc. 2-parter does feel like it's just like, oh, so we had a story, and now we're going to do this, and then we go back to that story. It feels very much like, whereas the previous 2 seasons, it all feels like, the 13 episodes are all like kind of seamless, like this season, it was definitely like, now off to this. Now
Insert pilot
back.
here.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the backdoor pilot it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So
but I can forgive it.
So yeah, Jess, I mean, what were your thoughts on the whole Infinity Inc. thing?
I mean, aside from the fact that it did feel a little bit out of place, I did really enjoy the story, and I would have been happy to have more with it. At first, when we weren't really realizing that it was a backdoor pilot, we were hoping that all of them would maybe make an appearance in the finale. And then, when they kind of didn't, it sort of became apparent that maybe, they were going somewhere with that. And then, of course, Jeff Johns released his interview saying that was definitely like the backdoor pilot. But I liked it. I like the concept of it. I think they have like more compelling characters, but they have like the ability to be a little bit more like dark with it. So I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get to maybe explore like that side of it, and get to see like what Mr. Bones was doing with the team that he was building, and getting introduced to some of these newer characters like Sandy. I would have liked to have actually been able to meet. I think that would have been cool. But I loved the introduction of Obsidian. Like, I thought that he was great, and I've enjoyed the Jade character. My main complaint, I think, is that we've not ever gotten very much of her, and I guess maybe that's why, is because they had the intention of spinning them off into their own show. But I do think that's kind of a shame we didn't get a little bit more of her.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've never really gotten to know Jade very well. Like, it's always been about the things she's doing rather than who she is. And I felt like this didn't even help with that very much, because it was all just about, I need to get to my brother, and nothing about like anything like about her character or personality. It was just very, well, other than I guess she's really determined and driven, that's what I know about her, and that's about it. So I would have liked to have definitely seen her more as a character, which I'm sure we would have gotten in the show. But yeah, it's always felt like she's very utilitarian to the plot, like in last season, and in this season. So yeah, I definitely would have liked to explore her more. Beth, what did you think about those 2 episodes?
I think those are actually my 2 favorite episodes, looking back. And it
Is it
it
because
really
of the shade?
okay, the shade is great. And I will say this. There was a moment where you paused the episode and it was just a screen of just his face. And I got to pick apart and analyze the shoulder seams of his costume and just salivate because I gotta love a good waistcoat. And he's got
Not
a
where I
great
thought you were going with that, for the record.
but it's historical. His suit is historical. There's only
Believe
one
me, I
little
have to
flaw with
listen
it,
to
like,
her angrily shout at shows because any show with any historically inaccurate costuming like gets her like literally angry, and she will be yelling about it. And like, it is nice to actually have one. I think this may be the first show with a historical costume where she has actually been happy that like the creators like actually researched like a true Victorian costume, because there's always a problem with either like what it looks like or the materials they use modern like synthetics and stuff, and she like gets very mad about, you know, like they didn't use the right
I have
fabrics.
my passion, and
Get
you
that.
have yours.
I get that.
But yeah, I mean, it's a wool coat. It doesn't have like a stereotypical modern cut of everything. Lows lapels, just mwah, I love it. But his personality, the way he rubs, like his personality rubs off everyone else, and like the friction between him and everyone else is just so delicious. And I can't get enough of the shade. And then when we went back to watching Young Justice recently, and when I saw the shade again, I was like, man, that's not fair. Because they went from this amazing costume to this like Party City Halloween store thing, and I don't understand. But
Oh.
yeah, more shade, please.
I loved him.
All right, Eric. I mean, because you, of course, have the background with these characters and with the comics. So yeah, what did you think about this two-parter?
I was gonna say, Nathan, you really have to get Beth the Starman trades and the Shade miniseries, because there's so much Victorian flashback stuff. It's insane.
Careful.
Okay.
And she would just love staring at the art alone. Trust me.
Careful, I might scream.
This, like I said, they're the two best episodes of the season.
Mhm.
I mean, once again, Sandy is literally one of my favorite characters. So the fact that of the Justice Society. So the fact that you didn't give me Sandy and you just name dropped him. Same with Damage. They throw out Damage's name at the end there, and I'm like, come on, you give me two of the best JSA members, but you don't actually give them to me. The hell, show. But no, I love Todd. Todd is a fantastic character that is so underused it's not even funny. So kind of getting to see him in live action finally is really cool. And the fact that, you know, we get to see the Green Lantern powers, even though we're not seeing constructs. The closest we've gotten to a proper live action Green Lantern ever. And yeah, sorry to throw shade on the movie. People can go back and listen to that episode of the 42 cast if they really want, because even then, it's just like, yeah, it's not really Green Lantern. But anyways, we're getting there. We're gonna get Green Lantern.
I just think that it's the worst thing ever thing that lots of people say is unfair to that movie. It was a mediocre movie. It does not deserve the hatred, like the sheer like salivating hatred of people foaming at the mouth that it gets. But yeah, no, it's yeah.
I hate that movie.
But no, like I said, Jade, and I mean, it's a really cool use of the Green Lantern powers. I mean, it's basically seeing how Alan used his ring, except a little more raw with the way she's using it, because it's much more forceful versus like Alan, well, not an artist like someone like Kyle. Alan was much more subtle and refined with his use of the ring versus this raw animalistic, like they said, burning down buildings, because it's by accident, but she was still burning down buildings. So it's really cool to see that version of the Green Lantern ring instead of, you know, just the giant green punching glove going into somebody's face kind of deal. So it was really cool to see that play on the constructs for once, to kind of see the raw elements of it at use. And I mean,
So
oh, go ahead. No,
Oh
go
no,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I just was imagining John Diggle with the Green Lantern ring again because I just love the idea that I have in my head. It's like, oh yeah, it's based on your imagination, and he's just like, I can imagine guns, and it's just he has two green guns, and that's all he uses the ring for. It's just two green guns.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother argument for a different time though, because if John was really John, he'd be an architect.
Oh
and you
no,
get
no,
the
no! I know,
architect.
I'm just talking about John Diggle, not John Stewart.
No,
Yes, I know.
I know. I'm
Lots
just
of
being
fans want John Diggle to be John Stewart, but he's not.
But like I said, that's sadly the fact that once again, two strongest episodes of the season, and they tease so much of the history of the more modern side of the JSA without giving us all that modern sides of the JSA. I will admit that I haven't researched those cameos, and those are some. I know how obscure those characters are. I have no idea who those people are.
Mm.
Like, I didn't freeze frame to catch the names. Like, it wasn't the Doom Patrol thing where I could be like, oh wow, they're actually referencing that. It's like it was more of, okay, Jeff, I have no idea who this person is. So you're even you're even out nerding the guy who can pick up on like some of the most obscure references possible.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, at least for me, I mean, it's funny. To me, it didn't land as well. Like again, I don't know DC lore anywhere near. Like I'm the Marvel king, at least up to 2000. Like I read Marvel comics for years, and I read all time periods of Marvel, and I still read Marvel occasionally. Like, but back issue, like older stuff, and and so like that's the lore that I'm very well like invested in. But so for that aspect, like when they reference characters, like I don't know who they're talking about. I don't, because especially because these aren't, I know the big characters, the ones who are like sort of prime Justice League kind of characters, because I watched Super Friends and I watched Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and all those cartoons. And so I know the basics of a lot of the more well-known characters in DC, but I don't know characters who are more sidelined and lesser known. So, but one of the strengths of this show has been the fact that it does give you the feeling that there is more going on in this universe than just what we're seeing on screen, whereas Arrow never did, like Arrow and the Arrowverse, it's like the things that we're watching are the important things, but it basically sounded like anything beyond that was just like normal world. Like, it didn't seem like the world lived and breathed. And that's because of the way those shows were set up. But that's one of the things that I like about Stargirl. But at the same time, when like a two-parter like this is so invested in that, like these are characters like you don't know, but we're going to talk about them, and we're going to sort of talk about the stuff that's going around. It was kind of like, yeah, I love the Shade. I love the way the Shade, interacts with everybody, and I really love it's kind of tropish, but everybody kind of loves like the guy that sort of presents himself as I'm like sort of like a darker, shadier character, but then is actually has a heart of gold and is actually like a pretty good, person, like when you get down to it, kind of character.
And we'll teach you how to make the best Earl Grey tea in town.
Right? Oh,
Right?
That was beautiful.
Oh my god, I love that. The thing where he's just like
Jean-Luc Picard would be proud.
Make the tea, like just make it. She was like so proud of herself when she finally got it get right, and he was happy with the tea. But God, I love him. But yeah, I mean, so a lot of the Infinity Inc. stuff, it just felt like, okay, this is like totally sidelined. I like the concept of the idea, like this is a place where metahumans who they're just like, I don't want to deal with it, like I don't want to be out there, my powers suck, and it kind of almost taking it in a more of an X-Men-y kind of direction of having powers isn't necessarily a good thing, and there can be bad repercussions. And of course, X-Men being my gateway into the whole Marvel thing, like that obviously hooked, but we didn't get enough of it, and we didn't really get invested in any characters really. I felt like, like we talked about, I don't feel like I have a very strong feeling for Jade and Obsidian. And so to me that was kind of a weakness. Now Keith David playing Mr. Bones, definitely A+.
I was about to say I do have a nitpick.
Oh, okay. What is your nitpick?
I hate this design for Mr. Bones.
Oh,
I hate this design for Mr. Bones so much, because if you look up the comic book Mr. Bones, he straight up like he's a skeleton. Like
Right.
it's literally like a skeleton.
Right.
For
I've
the
seen a
head,
drawing.
which I
Yeah.
think is a much stronger design choice than the X-ray skin. I kind of hate that for him.
But I like Keith David.
Keith David was perfect casting. Keith David is perfect as Mr. Bones. You kidding me? But I see him in much more of the spy stuff, so it kind of always
Yeah.
throws me off to see him, doing something like this. I do
Yeah.
love that Pat's interaction with the nurse at the very end of the second episode. You were my middle school teacher, weren't you? And she just dodges the question.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
opens up way more lore to me. I want to know more about that.
Well, yeah, especially considering how old Pat is.
How old all of them are. Like,
Right.
Yep.
yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it was intriguing to me, and if it had led to a series, I would probably feel a lot better about it. But like, that's the thing. I felt like for what we actually got, like I felt like kind of disappointed with it. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like where I fell off with it. But like, being a huge fan of Gargoyles, I will always be happy to hear Keith David's voice doing anything. But yeah, so let's talk about Courtney's journey in this season. Let's see. Let's start off with you, Eric. What do you think about Courtney, what they did with Courtney this season, sort of like, the going to where she felt like she was just completely useless, and then sort of like realizing that, like, she is the successor to Starman, and she, takes back basically her power by asserting herself. So what do you think about, all that?
At the end of the day, I think my biggest issue is the use of Sylvester over Jack in the first place. But I think like the fact that they chose not to use Jack also works, even though once again, that's a stronger tie to the Shade in the first place. But it's like, because I have no ties to Sylvester. Anybody who's read like the comics that directly tie Courtney into Jack versus any connection to Sylvester whatsoever, there is no connection to Sylvester. So a lot of us are just like, we have no connection to this character. I mean, Joel did a fantastic job, and obviously Breck, she's fantastic as Courtney. I mean, she's basically a DC Captain America, so to speak, because this is a girl who like sees the good in everybody, even the worst of the worst villains imaginable. She can still kind of be like, yeah, but you can still do something with your life other than being kind of a jerk. But the thing that drove me nuts the most about this entire season, about Courtney's story, was everything to do with her and Cameron. I just wanted to punch a wall. It drove me nuts. And they went full CW and didn't look back, to the extent that I was like, okay, who got the Flash mid series writers in here? Who got the Iris writers in here? What the hell is going on?
That's harsh.
I was okay. That is harsh. I was okay with it, but here we are.
All right, like I was gonna save this for, but at the same time, it's like we can't talk about every character individually. So here's what I'm gonna say about Cameron. There was lots of build up to Cameron being dark and nasty, and again, it just feels like the writing like set something up and then just decided to completely avoid it, because like so Cindy, who knows him very well since they were little children, is like, Courtney, you don't understand, like he's not the person you think he is. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be like the surprise, because everybody thinks Cindy's actually the bad person, but really it's going to be that no, like Courtney doesn't realize like Cameron is actually very bad. Like he's not like this good kid that she thinks he is. And like when he finds out like that his dad was killed, that he will really go crazy and really will be violent and awful. And we never really got that. We got kind of wishy-washy, like, yeah, I don't really like them now that the secret was revealed, and maybe I'm a little sinister, but I kind of waffle back on that really quickly kind of thing. And I felt very disappointed, because I could have gone with the let's push them together and get them really close if we were going to get like a really good twist like that it's like, no, like now Cameron really is a villain. and there's no turning back from that. Like, I would have liked that twist, and instead we got and they lived happily ever after, the end, and I was just kind of like, ugh.
Let me sum up Cameron's journey this season in one sentence. I hit puberty, guys. Am I wrong?
Okay, I thought it was going to be
voice he was
emo
using the
is
whole
in,
time?
but yeah.
The dark, broody Batman voice is like, come on, my dude, what are you doing?
Girl, pretty. Ugh.
Yeah, I was not as thrilled with the Cameron stuff either.
And I love Icicle Jr. in the comics. Icicle Jr. is a fantastic character in the comic books. That's not what we got here.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, Beth, what did you think about all that? I mean, with Courtney in general, but you can bring in the Cameron stuff since we're talking about him
the relationship was pretty cringe. But at the same time, being that age and you're crushing real hard on this hot boy, I mean, you can kind of lose perspective. But yeah, I kind of lost some respect for Courtney's character at that point, with how everything else just took second place to this. And I know it probably originated with the thought of trying to like make it better because of his dad dying the way he did, and trying to somehow like make it up for it. And it doesn't really make sense, and it's also kind of grody in that way too. So
You've lost a dad, but you've gained a girlfriend, so it's okay, right?
Yeah. If you're lonely, just squeeze this. I mean, this is really gross. I don't like this at all.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, any other thoughts though about beyond the Cameron stuff with Courtney this season?
So Courtney kind of finds her power in this. Rather than relying on the staff to give her power, she finds her own inner strength to reclaim what's hers. And in this case, it is the staff. The staff is hers. And she gives up that power midway through the season. And you can see how she suffers from that, just emotionally, mentally. Everything goes south when she gives up that staff. But when she sees that she needs to have that, that's the really bad wording. That she has earned the staff.
Yeah.
And has the right to wield it. She becomes stronger as an individual, not because of the staff, but because of what she symbolizes with the staff. It becomes a hope thing. And so going back into the Stargirl thing and picking that up again, it was powerful if you look at it from that level, the psychological bit.
Yeah. No, you took what I wanted to say about it basically, because it was basically about her realizing that she's not. This isn't like, oh, I'm like the runner-up or I'm like the replacement for Starman. Like, I'm the second best, the best there is now that there isn't one, which is kind of, I think, how she felt about it before there was Starman. And then once he showed up, in her mind, she just kind of like was like this, like, I'm not worthy of this. And that's why she's, sort of as other things like caught her attention, it was kind of like, well, maybe I don't even need to do this anymore because like, here's the real deal. And I was only ever a replacement. And just kind of realizing that, no, like this is something that, I'm the only one who can do this. And I am the one who, and this is who I am and this is what I want to be, and like actually making it her own. And I like that was actually good. That was the part of the finale that I actually liked. I was pretty sure that's where they were going. Like, it was something I predicted it at the next to last episode, but it's not like it was something that was telegraphed to me like way from the beginning, but it was kind of sort of like, I saw like where they were going just before they went there. And so like, yeah, I thought that was really well done. And I thought that was pretty well set up. With what they did, and I really liked that for her. And just any other thoughts about Courtney this season?
No, I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said. And the only thing is, I think in the beginning, it felt a little like odd at first that she was like so eager to like kind of like take a back seat. But I think, they had kind of convinced her between like Starman and Pat, or Foster and Pat, that she needed to kind of like focus on herself and also, have that like balance or whatever, which we get the reveal towards the end of the season that's like kind of BS. And so But overall, like I liked her journey for exactly the same reasons that you all said. I loved that moment where she kind of came into her own and she takes the staff back, because it's what, we were kind of like rooting for the whole season. So it just, in the beginning, it just felt like many things in this season did, because of everything with like the Ultra-Humanite, I guess. It just felt a little out of place or like off character, that she was so eager to take a step back from this team that she had built. But I think the only reason that she was willing to do that was because it was, quote, Starman that was there to take the leadership role. So I think had it been anyone else, she wouldn't have taken that step back.
Yeah, since we already talked about Cameron, I don't really feel like I need to go there. The one thing that I wanted to bring up that we haven't yet is one thing that disappointed me, and I felt like, again, was just kind of like, I felt like there wasn't very strong connective tissue with the previous season, was that, there had been this whole question in season 2 about what is Courtney going to do with her life. And there was this sort of struggle between her and Pat that was never resolved, because then we got into the whole Eclipso thing, and so it was just kind of dropped about, like you have to have something beyond being a superhero that you're doing. And her idea was like, no, I'll just be Stargirl all the time. And that's why I think, to Jess's point, it felt a little bit weird that this season it was more like from the get-go, she was just kind of like, seemed like, oh no, I don't need to. And it's like, okay, well then, but can we address then, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think about your future? Is there something you're looking at doing, or is all this just like completely
Cameron,
instinctual, emotional, off the cuff?
did I just say that out loud? My inside voice came out.
That
I'm
was
sorry.
good. That was good.
Yeah.
Fair.
So yeah, I would have liked for that side of things to have been addressed, because in the previews they made it seem like that, because they like sort of cut things in a way where it looked like Sylvester and Pat were going to have an argument about Courtney's future. Yeah. And that scene never happened the way it was shown in the previews, about like, it seemed like Sylvester was going to advocate, no, like Courtney's going to be like Stargirl all the time, and Pat was like, no, she needs a job, kind of thing. And like, I don't know where that went, but like that wasn't like, that would mischaracterize the like the relationships in this season completely.
Yep, clever trailer editing.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that they were going to bring that up, and that was going to be part of like the dynamic this season, is like Sylvester actually encouraging her to be Stargirl more, and Pat being like, whoa, like, take care of like the things that you need. And I love like the quiet moments that we had, like with Starman, like just sort of like musing on like the idea of like, what am I going to do? I'm back after I've been declared dead, but I have no family. Like I don't have anything, I don't know how to do anything, because he was independently wealthy. Before. So it's kind of like, how do I do things? What do I do for a job? And I was like, that was actually interesting. I was like, okay, I actually feel for this character more now than I have this entire season, as he's just like going on about this. And again, to find out like that was also like just like a cheat of the Ultra-Humanite, just I guess trying to get sympathy from everybody or whatever. But like I was like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff like I kind of like when they do those quiet moments in these shows where they actually talk about how does real life impact their super lives, and yeah, I wanted that to be more in this season.
Of course, looking back, I think of those moments as, is that the Ultra-Humanite talking or him method acting?
Yeah. And I think we're meant to be confused there. I think those were his lucid moments where he was embodying the character of Sylvester, trying to stay in character. I agree.
So let's talk about Yolanda, Beth, and Rick, and sort of take them as sort of a group. Yes, Beth. I know your name is the same as Beth, and I know that every time anybody mentions Beth on the show, you're like, what? Or hello, or whatever.
I'm right here.
Right, yeah. Yes, we know you do that.
I'm easily amused, okay? Don't judge me.
All right, but yeah, so yeah, Jess, what do you think about those three characters this season?
Honestly, I kind of felt like they got a bit of a back seat in some respects, but there's just so much they were trying to do this season. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of them. But the things that I liked the at least the appearance of a resolution maybe between Yolanda and her mom and her family, because that was kind of something that I feel like has been coming.
It's nice that there was a resolution. I felt like it was way too easy.
Yeah, I don't think it was like I think they started to mend the bridges, but I don't think it was like, not like with Beth and her parents, where
Right.
her parents are like, yes, absolutely, we're gonna be sidekicks, and they like, jumped into it full force. But they did at least give the appearance that that might start to mend the relationship. But whether or not it will, I guess we'll never know, because we'll never get to really see how that worked out. Um, Rick's character was kind of complicated in like some respects, because they didn't say a lot about him, and then all of a sudden they did some weird things with like the hourglass, but then they kind of like, I felt, forgot their own rules for a minute towards the end there. So I don't know. I know Eric has a lot of thoughts on Rick, so I think I'm gonna let him talk more about Rick, because I don't just have like a ton to say. Although I will say this, I always thought, and I know y'all aren't big fans of the ships, but I was always putting Rick and Yolanda together. So the fact that him and Beth are together just took me completely out of left field. I was like, I was not expecting that.
See, like I have to go back and actually listen to that dialogue, because I've seen people posting online about it. I did not get that the shade was saying that the two of them were getting married. I thought that
He was.
Impending nuptials. I don't know what else that
well,
would
yeah.
mean.
Well, no. Because who did he mention second? Did he mention Beth second or Rick second?
I felt like he mentioned them together. I don't
No,
know
he mentioned
without
one, then he mentioned the other, and he said, and
He
they're
mentioned them
impending
together.
nuptials. I thought he was just talking about the last person he said was getting married to somebody, soon around the corner or whatever he was saying. I never got the idea that he was saying Rick and Beth were getting married, because I would like, the phrasing sounded a bit weird to me for that.
No, he fully meant that. Like, that was one of those
That's how I
things that
took
they've
it.
talked about post show.
Yeah,
Like, in those end show interviews, they very much went, no, they're together. That's what they were saying there.
So it took me by surprise. I would have liked them to develop that relationship just a tad more, but I also get that that's kind of extra and not what we needed to focus on. But like with Beth specifically, I do like that she was able to kind of like reconcile with her parents, because I think her parents like were really trying to do their best to help her out. I thought, although it was incredibly convenient, I did love the reveal of the suit being like more tactical and like able to help her, just because it's something that we've been harping on for the last 3 seasons. I mean, really, until we get that reveal, is that she's useless in a fight. Like, she's great, she's super smart, she's got like the whole hacker thing going on, but if she's basically Oracle, why is she in the field? And so I like that they kind of gave her something to like give her a little bit more relevance. Super sad we're not going to get to see her new updated costume, because she desperately needed it. But I do love that the parents are like full sidekicks, and I thought that was very cute. So
Yeah,
those
no,
are my thoughts.
I definitely liked that the mask had like the combat mode or whatever, and then like I liked that kind of. It's kind of like, and I don't know if you watched all the DC CW shows, but it's kind of like how like Brainiac would fight in Supergirl, where it was like he would predict like where people were gonna pit. So it was a lot of him just like dodging until like he could get like one hit in or whatever. But like I like that sort of thing of like where people are attacking somebody, they get frustrated just because they just can't hit them.
You can't hit them,
because they're constantly like moving out of the way, and I just love that sort of thing. So yeah, it was cool.
He also used a lot of physics in his fighting too.
Yeah,
like that was an actual line, and I thought that was hilarious, because to me physics is magic. So I mean,
it is not magic, it is math.
No, she's saying math
magic.
is magic, like because like she doesn't get how it works, and her like it's just like magic.
Hey.
That's fair. It's complicated.
All right, so Eric, yeah, what do you think about Yolanda, Beth, and Rick this season?
I actually ended up disliking Yolanda in at least the first half of the season, especially with how much she was harping on Cindy, even though Cindy's literally trying to do the right thing. And it's like, I understand what they were going for. I understand that she was basically being like her mother, But that's half of why I'm like wincing when I say, when I hear people say, oh, they're happy that she made up with her mom. It's like, yeah, but her mom is also super toxic towards this poor girl. And I don't think that's magically going to become better just because she walked away from the house for a couple days.
That's true.
So the
Yeah,
whole
I have thoughts about that I'm going to get to, but
I wince whenever I understand what you meant by that, Jess, but I wince so much when I heard that because I'm like, no, because that's going back to a toxic family environment. That's not going to magically help or fix anything just because she walked away for 5 seconds. And whether or not she's telling the truth, you really think her mom's going to be cool with her, being in a spandex superhero costume?
I mean, probably not.
That's going to add a whole new element to the
Yeah.
toxicity right there.
Yeah, and
Just
maybe
saying,
that's what they would have explored. And if that's the case, then I'd say, yeah, stay far, far away from that. But I think she had to try because her family was really important to her. So I do feel like she needed to at least try and mend a bridge there.
the showrunner, the creators were so proud of their little reveal where Cindy had the laptop at the end, and like, oh, we're gonna try to fool everybody into thinking Cindy's the killer. And I just was like shaking my head the whole. I'm like, no, of course it's not. And first of all, Scooby-Doo rules: you don't reveal who the killer is, like, right off the bat. You gotta wait until the end to like reveal. So I'm like, of course, the first person they're trying to hint is the killer is obviously not it. But I was just like, oh god, come on, guys, like, don't do this. We know it's not Cindy. Move on. But anyway, all right, Eric. Yeah, like, what about the other characters?
You're good. No, because I get you on that, and I'm right there with you. Because I was like, really, we're doing this reveal as if the rest of us couldn't piece that together right away. Going, yeah, of course Cindy took the laptop. Duh.
Yeah.
For a very obvious reason, she's looking for a way to help herself because we all knew she was going through something. It's like, yeah, we know, Raiders, you're not that clever. We already knew all this. Anyways, no, Beth being the most like well-grounded out of the team definitely both hurt and helped her because like a lot of her storyline could kind of be brushed to the side and we all knew things would be okay. Like Beth wasn't going to go through that bad of a hardship versus the very second that Rick got his hands on the hourglass. Because, obviously being the comic book nerd that I am and being the huge follower of the modern JSA as much as I had, Rick went through the, Speedy as a junkie type of situation that Green Arrow did, but they actually did it in a much more interesting way because the hourglass in the comic books, so Rex created I'm blanking on the pill, but it was a pill instead. Like he had an hourglass that held the pills, and the hourglass helped keep track of how long the effects of the pill would be. But they very much go into Rick becoming basically a junkie and going through withdrawals and abusing the pill as much as he did. And I was the second I saw that, the second I realized where they were going with that, I'm like, oh, okay, they're actually going to handle the addiction in a really interesting way, and it's going to be cool to kind of see where they take this and see how far they go with Rick. And I mean, I thought it was handled well. It obviously got rushed towards the end, but I thought for the most part it was handled very well. And out of the three, you could tell his journey got affected the most by the Ultra-Humanite and the nonsense that he was pulling on the team. And I'm like, oh man, poor Rick. And I was just, like I said, it was just kind of really interesting and fascinating to see where the writers could take Our Man's addiction story, similar to the way that they handle it in the comic books, but in a much different way, because obviously they're not going to do a pill addict story with the way they grounded the Our Man powers inside of the series. And I was more than fine with that because none of us want to see, a pill popping addiction story in something like this. So I thought it was an interesting analog the way they handled that. And I mean, once again, you love to see Beth and her family reconcile, especially when you get to hear the parents coming up with their code names and what their powers would be. I thought that was very cute. But overall, no, I thought while a lot of that took a back seat, you can kind of just listening to me kind of hear the fact that, while a lot of it took a back seat, it's also like, oh, cool. They were drawing directly from the comic books and using them in a really strong in healthy way. I mean, overall the character that probably suffered the most in the whole season was Grundy.
Yeah.
Because we barely got to see Grundy.
Oh God, yeah.
We saw his hand. That's about it.
I was just expecting something, and yeah. Beth, what about?
I missed you, buddy.
Yeah,
That's
no,
like
exactly.
Grundy.
I thought for sure, like when they found out, like that, oh, it was the Ultra-Humanite, like Rick was gonna be like, what was it that he kept trying to get me to do, and like I'm gonna do the opposite of that or something, and then like Grundy would revive and help them, and I was like, oh no, Grundy, okay. Beth, what about you? How do you feel about Yolanda and Beth and Rick this season?
Well, first of all, no, I feel compelled to say Beth like Grundy. Um, yeah, kind of the same as what was already said. Like with Yolanda, on the surface, you feel like it might be a understanding between her and her mother, but at the same time, like with all that her mother has done over the previous 2 seasons, like I really don't think that woman is really forgiving. I think she's just trying to get her daughter back home to shame her some more, and it reeks of a mental and emotional abuse situation where you're nasty to someone and then you're apologetic and then you're nasty to them again, and it's just a cycle, and then it goes and goes and goes until the victim just has to walk away. And I'm proud that she finally walked away, but don't go back. Seriously, don't go back, Yolanda. That's not what you need. That's not a loving parent you've got there. With Beth, though, it feels odd talking about someone with my name in third person.
It's not that uncommon a name. You must have talked about people named
No,
Beth that
really,
weren't you before.
It wasn't until the last 5 years that all of a sudden everyone has my name and I'm freaking out about it. Okay.
Okay.
My name is not short for anything. It's just Beth. So yeah, it's strange for me. So anyway, her parents have always like freaked me out with how they are. The first season, she was always trying to get their attention, and now it's flipped to they're trying to get her attention, and it was really jarring in both instances. But when they finding a compromise, I feel was really important in that relationship, because it was always just a little bit strained and weird and not healthy either way. And yeah, with Rick and the addiction thing, I mean, just the scene of him in the bathroom when he's trying to take off the hourglass and seeing how much pain he's in. He cannot exist without the hourglass at that point. But as soon as he opens up about it, it's like 2 episodes later, oh, he's fine. Okay, but how did you fix that? How did you fix the hourglass? The inhibitor was broken. Did you make a new inhibitor? How'd you do that? How'd you know how to do that? Those kinds of things they didn't even address. And that kind of hand-waving magic wand stuff just never sits right with me.
Last 2 episodes. Poorly written.
Yeah, that one didn't work for me either.
Yeah,
that was where
rushed.
it kind of fell apart for me, because it was a very strong storyline and I wanted more.
Yeah,
resolution.
bibbity bobbity nope.
Yeah. Yeah, you're echoing my thoughts about Yolanda, Beth, and yeah, it's my issue was that this season they ignored the whole the way that they made it sound like it was just that the mom was upset that she wouldn't tell her where she was going or that she was staying out late at night and stuff like that, which made it seem like it was Yolanda's fault. But we're completely ignoring season 1. Like, they never brought up the fact that she was basically grounded for life, and her parents wouldn't even speak to her and would ignore her existence. Yeah. There is a really bad history here, and there is that's definitely on the mom's side and not on Yolanda's before we got to this point. And I feel like if they had characterized it that way, like the way that you're supposed to feel, but it's almost like they wanted everyone to forget season 1 and just be like, well, there's actually some problems on both sides here. Like, maybe the mom's a bit too harsh, but Yolanda should really tell her what she's doing. But I'm like, wait, she's grounded for life, and other than Yolanda's supposed to check in and tell her where she's going, she ignores her. Like, she would literally would talk to them when she came in the door, and they wouldn't even look at her. And the brother would be trying to help communicate between them, and they would just basically ignore him when he was trying to take communicate for her. And it was just That was like the most insane, and like I felt like it was kind of like Rick, like, and how Rick needed to get away from his uncle, and I felt like it's awful, that the kids in this, town are being treated so badly, but it's like Yolanda kind of needs to get away from these people too. The problem is more of a legal one, because at least in this case, these parents, are still around, whereas the uncle just disappeared, or Pat got rid of him, which we'll never know.
He still has him strapped to a chair with his eyelids peeled back with saline drops going in to keep his eyes from rotting or whatever, so he can watch nonstop episodes of Supergirl.
Yeah, that was my joke. That's what Pat did to him. He forced him to watch episodes of Supergirl until he left. But we don't know, because that scene was so like sinister on like how they were painting Pat. Like, he could have just made the uncle disappear. Like, we don't know. We never see him after that scene. They're just like, he dropped the charges and now he's gone.
Pat is MVP.
Okay.
Pat is MVP. I love that man.
Yeah, no, Pat's great. But yeah, no, I mean, Beth, talk about most improved character, because I found her annoying in season 1, and I've adored her this season and last season. I absolutely think that she is great. I like that they've given her like more like of a physical ability so that she can participate, and so it does make sense for her to be there, because much like Jess, I was always arguing like, why isn't she back somewhere, like, because all that she's doing is all like hacking and stuff. It's like she can do that from any location as long as they have earpieces and can talk to her. So I'm glad that they gave her some physical capability. I do find the parents now very annoying personally. I like the fact that they want to help her, but I feel like they've like 180'd their personality so much that it's like, it's hard to buy the change from them completely ignoring her to being like, like more into negligent, not like Yolanda's parents who are doing it just because of like anger, like at her and how she quote unquote shamed them. Without any idea of maybe this is a teachable moment, or maybe this is something that we should help her to understand that she shouldn't devalue her body that way and stuff. Like, no, we were just going to punish you forever, and not with any like hope of anything better, like, or rehabilitation or education or anything.
You're dead to me.
You're dead to me. Beth's parents were more like negligent, and then it's suddenly like, oh, like, yeah, we're all over you and everything, which just kind of felt like it was slightly annoying, and seemed really weird of a switch. But I'm glad that Beth is at least like talking with them and everything, because for her sake. But the Rick thing, that was the thing I was really invested in, because I was like, this is interesting. Because even though until they did the reveal, I was like, why in the world would Sylvester be like, just take that inhibitor off? I don't know why, Rex put that in the first place. And I was like, what? Like, it's kind of obvious. If you have something that limits it to only an hour of use, then it was because bad things happen if you use it for more. And probably, and it's like addictions is like the obvious thing, right? Not knowing anything about the comics, I was like, probably caused him to be addicted to it. And guess what? That's what it did. And but yeah, it was an interesting thing to go. But again, I felt like it was another thing that was just kind of like fizzled at the end, and just like everybody said, it was kind of disappointing to me, because I really wanted to see that, because Rick has always been the one with like anger issues and stuff like that. So the fact that he was against Cindy, the fact that he was as suspicious and as like angry at Courtney when she started like not participating, like I felt a bit better about that than I did about Yolanda's issues, which seemed more of just like, I'm just gonna be angry now, kind of attitude. But I was like, Rick's always been a little that way, and understandably, because of how he was raised.
With Yolanda, I can understand though, because if all she is known from her parents is being forever mad because of your past deeds, maybe that's why she treated Cindy the way she did. And from her point of view, it's understandable, because Cindy treated her so badly. Why should she give her a chance?
For Yolanda, it was more of the way that I felt like she betrayed Courtney, and like just being like, well, Courtney doesn't deserve to lead this team. Like, yeah, like that was more of like the like stuff from her that like I felt like was kind of like out of nowhere, kind of.
Okay. Gotcha.
Just want her to be angry, because I do sort of get, Cindy is the one that posted the pictures to this. Oh no, wait, she doesn't know that. She still thinks it was, oh, that's right, because he never said that it wasn't him. Oh, yeah, that's right. So yeah, I guess she
I
is
thought she
just
found out somehow, but I don't remember how.
because I remember us talking about
I'm
that in
not
season
sure
one,
that
that was
she
one of the things that
did.
disappointed us, is that he never got a chance to tell her before he died that actually it was Cindy who did that and not him. Um, but yeah. Although I think no. But yeah, so that was, I was more invested in the Rick story, and yeah, I wish that they had done more with it, like either started it earlier, or at least I would have felt like if they just been like, this is something he's got to deal with now, and recovery is hard, kind of thing. I think that would have been a better way to like leave it if they weren't able to deal with it all within the season. Let's see. Next up, let's talk about the Crocs and Pat
God,
and
face.
Pat and Barbara. I'm gonna lump Pat and Barbara in too, just because I want to talk about Pat and Barbara and Barbara's relationship with God, I'm awful with names.
Paula.
I'm sorry,
Paula.
Paula. Yeah, Barbara's relationship with Paula is also kind of key to this season. So just start us off. How do you feel about what happened with the Crocs this season, and how do you feel about like Pat and Barbara in this season?
I was devastated that they killed the Crocs off. I'm not gonna lie. I really was rooting for them to be just kind of like a help and mentors to the young JSA. And I loved the relationship with Pat and Barbara and the two of them. It made for some really good comedic relief. Some of my favorite scenes over the season were with Paula and Barb. I adored their friendship. I loved them together.
I have to do
So,
all this extra work because of my boss. And then Paula
right?
just like shows up. It's like, you're gonna give Barbara an easier time.
No. I loved that relationship. So
Best
I
friend
was
goals right there.
yeah. So I was very sad when they came to an untimely demise. I also still didn't understand why that became integral to Icicle's plan. Like, why did he have to kill them? Like, why did he bother luring them down there? Like, I don't think that they were that much in the way, but I mean, I guess that's the same reason of like, why did he kill the gambler?
It was him being himself. Like that was full on petty revenge. There was no other way to put that. It's perfectly in Icicle's character, just to
It
basically
is.
go after anybody who basically got in his way, so to speak, or basically like not necessarily did him wrong, but in his eyes did him wrong. So
Yeah.
anybody that basically turned their back on him, or like turned their back in general, he was going after. That's why
Yeah.
all three of them. I mean, makes perfect sense too. I mean, he sent Dragon King in Ultra-Humanite's body after the gambler, and then he goes after and kills Sportsmaster and his wife, who are MVPs of the season. So bummed. But I mean, it's Icicle being Icicle. It's literally him going, you turned your back on me, so I'm gonna kill you.
I know.
Yeah, I think it was more of the fact that they were like members of the ISA, and he felt like that they betrayed the ISA by becoming friends with Pat and Barbara and Courtney, and
Gotcha.
like doing all that it's like you're not, like, even though they thought he was dead, like they're not trying to like fight to the bitter end, like be against like the them and everything. Like it's like they turned, and so because they turned, it's like you're gonna die, because that's that's my revenge on you.
It's like he cried out, "Avenge me!" and they didn't listen.
Oh, but anyways, yeah. So
They had better things to do, like worry about Doritos in her lunch.
Oh yeah, right. Oh man. That was kind of funny from
That was
season
great.
2. Ugh. But anyways, so I mean, I loved the Crocs. I was super sad to see them go. And then like Pat and Barbara, I always enjoy like when they kind of get like interspersed and they have these like nice family moments, or they get to have like nice moments with the kids. So like I like Barb and Mike's relationship.
Mhm.
I think that they have a really like good relationship. And then the same way I like Pat and Courtney. So I know they don't often kind of pair them as they should be with like mom and daughter and like father and son, but I do kind of like that in that like found family in a way kind of like aspect of it. So I do also like those relationships and those pairings, and I think they're always done pretty well.
Yeah, I do sometimes have problems with it just because it does sometimes give the appearance that like Pat doesn't care that much about Mike. That
It does.
sometimes gets me a little upset because I'm like, like because Barbara and Courtney get scenes together and Pat and Courtney get scenes together. So it seems like both of them really love Courtney, even though Pat's not her biological father, he has this strong relationship with her. And I was glad they developed the Barbara and Mike, because I don't think we've really had that in the previous seasons very much. And I'm glad they developed that this season. But at the same time, it's like, it's still not Pat and Mike. We still don't get a lot of Pat and Mike where I'm like, this is your actual father. It's like, I want to feel like there's more of a connection between those two than they've depicted. I mean, sure, there's lots of scenes we don't see. There's lots of moments that we don't see, in their lives. And then that could be the time that, like Pat and Mike are doing stuff together. But I just feel like I would like to have a better feeling about just, Mike, because we know that Mike doesn't feel like he's like is included in things. And I think that goes a little bit beyond just the JSA superhero stuff, like that he feels like, Courtney's like the favored child over him. Now, it hasn't gone to a toxic place, but at the same time, it does almost seem like he feels that way, that like he's not, treated in the same way that Courtney is. And I was like, I really would like to see that addressed. And maybe if they had done a fourth season, they would have.
Yeah,
But
I think they were
yeah.
setting that up for the next season.
Yeah. But it was nice also, though, like, I mean, because I could totally understand Pat's thoughts of, since Mike's mom abandoned him, like, and she's his ex, like, why would I ever like want to have them connect? But at the same time, like, for Mike, that's like a dangling thread in his life, and something that, bothers him a lot. And so allowing him to have, that, you letting them meet, and, the fact that she was willing to come to their town to meet Mike, seemed to me like, oh, like maybe she's changed a little bit, and so like, so that's probably a good thing that he's reconnected with her if she's changed a little bit. So, again, I felt like there was lots of positive stuff with Mike this season, and even though I'm not talking about Mike yet, I just, I did like that. But anyway, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else to say with Barb and Pat? No, okay. Beth, what do you think about the Crocs and Barb and Pat?
I can't remember a whole lot of scenes with Barb and Pat this season, and that's unfortunate, I feel.
What about Barb and crap, I already lost her name again. Paula.
That was marvelous, and I'm glad there was a payoff to Barb learning how to shoot a crossbow, because when you see that bolt going through the air, you think, oh, Paula's here. Oh, it's Barb. That's great. I love it. I'm here for this. That was such a wonderful thing, and I'm really glad that that paid off. That like the two characters, they influenced each other,
mm-hmm.
rather than, oh, I'm just gonna teach Paula how to be a good girl. Yeah. But Paula taught Barbara some self-defense and some other kind of life skills that she didn't have before, and I think that was really nice. It's just really sad that they were, iced and shattered and stuff.
Yeah, Eric, how do you feel about the Crocs and Pat and Barbara this season?
Oh, I love the Crocs so much. I mean, I didn't think I'd ever say that sentence about a version of Sportsmaster. Especially after Young Justice, I'm like, Sportsmaster.
Yeah, this is so unexpected because of how he's depicted in other media, to just have him be so likable in this version.
But I mean, I think some of the best strengths about this season are the very small, touching character moments that kind of show character growth, as well as just like where somebody's at as a character. I mean, the fact that, Pat is hurting as he is, and still researching into his ex, and, Croc walks in he thinks Croc is going to be Croc, and then he literally pulls up a chair and he goes, "Listen, dude, I'm not trying to screw with you right now. You can talk to me. I'm not messing with you. You can literally talk to me." And I'm like, that scene right there, obviously right before the tragedy hits at the end of the episode. But I'm like, a scene like that is a perfect example of why, a show like this has succeeded for the 3 seasons that it did. It's stuff like that grounds it in such a beautiful way, in my opinion, because like you get these small little character moments that you don't expect from a character like that. I mean, same with Barbara's relationship with Paula, and the fact that Paula is trying to basically become a normal person, so to speak, instead of just the killer that she's known to be. She's literally trying to fit in with everybody, and the fact that it's Barbara's going to bat for her, literally going to the meeting to support her, and like just gaining this friendship. And I mean, you see how it affects her. It literally has her, no one's ever called me a friend before, that type of thing. And once again, it's that kind of writing that, like, I love the superhero stuff, but then I love these quiet character moments that you get. I mean, we all love Pat, but Pat doesn't really get the chances to why can't I think of Luke Wilson? I couldn't think of Luke Wilson's name for a minute. You don't necessarily suspect him to get like these awesome dramatic moments that he gets, and you see how badly the shadow realm affected him, and it was really cool to kind of see him go through that growth. I mean, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we also get Pat being a complete idiot because he just wants his best friend to be back.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't, in my opinion, he didn't push back enough on the sidekick arguments. I hated that at the beginning of the season. It's like, you're my sidekick. I really wanted Pat to be like, dude, you've been gone for how long? Like,
yeah.
I know he did finally say at one point, I'm no one's sidekick, but at the same time, I really wanted him to put it in his place faster. And yes, obviously it was the Ultra-Humanite, and we all know that now. But like, even back then, you kind of really wanted to see Pat stand up for himself. You kind of brushed that to the side way too easily and dropped that in almost like a humorous way. But I hated every time that was coming up, because it's like, don't you disrespect Pat like that, my dude. Pat's been through so much while you've been dead.
Yeah.
Give him respect, damn it.
I have hated how they have treated Pat through this whole series, as far as like whenever he can. The only person who has given Pat respect from the old days, quote unquote, was John Wesley Shipp's Flash. He is the only one. Like, they showed, like, even back in the day, like, he was like, no, I want to hear Pat's opinion. Like, Pat deserves to have like a say too, and stuff like that. And I'm like, thank you, John Wesley Shipp. Thank you. You always like raise the bar, like whenever you're in a scene in this show or in the Flash, where it's always just like, oh, like the gravitas has appeared, with him, So yeah, I just I love him so much. But yeah, I like the fact that he is always dignified Pat and been like, his opinion matters, and like we shouldn't like look down on Pat even when he was, quote unquote, the driver.
I guess to finish my point about the small, quieter character moments, and I know you want to talk about Mike, but I mean that. Oh man, obviously there was her consoling the Croc's daughter, whose name for the life of me I'm blanking on.
Artemis.
But no, the that got to me, obviously, but the other one that really got me, and I got a couple tears going down when it hit, was just the thanks, Mom. The second that hits, I was just like, oh God. I'm like, just her relationship with Mike and how it's evolved, and just hearing him say thanks, Mom, and like seeing her reaction, it got me. It got me hard. It got me tears rolling down the eyes. I'm like, I need a minute. I need to recover from this.
Yeah, no, I totally understand about that. Like I said, I was glad that they gave any development to Mike's relationships this season at all. I just, again, like, yeah, it's good that he and Barbara are connecting, but just want Pat, take an interest in your son, please. Like, come on, man. I get there's all this stuff going on all the time, and your best friend is just, you think come back to life, but Mike needs to know that you care too. But for me, the Crocs. Oh my God, again, total surprise. I did not think that I would like them as much as I did, and even with them being as annoying as they are, and to just like them so much, where it's just like, they just like barge in, and it's like, they'll just come in, whether they don't knock, they'll just come in, they'll
The
just say
charming
what
kind of annoying. It's like they went to the Seinfeld School of Acting.
they wake up and they're already in their kitchen and stuff, and it's just like, what are you doing here? But it's like the way they've depicted them in this, it's like their intentions come from a place of they want to be helpful, like they're like, oh man, like if you just had the time, you would of course want to eat the healthiest stuff, and so we're going to take our time to help you out by giving you the healthiest food that we can give you, and stuff like that, where it's just like, it's sweet even though it is obviously annoying and everything. And I loved when like he and Starman, Sports Bastard Starman are getting on each other's nerves when they're both over the house, and like that they eventually all sit down with Pat to watch the movie, and all that kind of I just thought that was just really awesome, that it's just like, oh, all three of them together, that's awesome. After of course Starman went crazy and tried to kill them in a supermarket, but that's a whole other
As
thing.
you do.
Although I will say, like, the combat with them has always been like really good. Although obviously season 1, where they had a bigger budget, it was better. But I did like the thing in the supermarket, because I do like watching them fight and the way they fight, and I feel like they've had very good choreography for their combat. And so that was really good. But yeah, totally crushed by the freeze death thing. And my biggest problem with it is I don't feel like they're dumb enough to go into like an obvious trap and just be like, oh look, there's a trap, let's go follow it, like, I'm just like, what are you doing? Not call anybody and be like, hey, there's a thing and it's obvious they're trying to lure us to a spot, like maybe other people should go with us to this thing. So yeah, I did have some slight problems with that. But nobody's brought up yet, Artemis is the one that takes out Icicle at the end, and
As
I really
she should be, though.
right, but that's what I'm saying,
Exactly.
though. I did like that, because even though I don't feel like she's had a lot of development through these seasons, and she hasn't been given a lot, she does get the scene where we see her mourning her parents' death, and I think the actress handled that fine. But I really did like the idea that she's hunted Icicle down, and it's just like, because when he quote unquote seemed to die at the end of the fight, I was like, no, they've already shown like he can be like pulverized or whatever, and like he'll just come back together. And so I was like, so that's not really a final ending. But then they give the thing where she just lights him on fire, and I was like, you go, girl. So I was really glad that they gave that to her as a way of like putting a final ending on him.
I love that she's also the Batman of the JSA.
Yeah.
Right.
How does she keep finding where we are?
Yeah, and like with Pat and Barbara, I mean, Barbara was great, I think, because of the stuff with Mike and the stuff with Paula, so I don't have a lot to add there, because I don't think that she did a lot on her own, but I did like those scenes with those characters, and I like the fact that it was Paula who gave her like she can do something now, she can fire a crossbow, and I was like, that's nice. But yeah, and Pat, I have to, in hindsight, the only way I can make it work is just like I think Eric brought up. He wanted his friend to be back so much that he was just turning a blind eye to all the insanity, which seems like such a Pat thing to do. Like, it's because he's such a laid back, like, just good person, like I can totally see that he just wants Sylvester. And I'm sure like Ultra-Humanite like knew enough details to be able to like, well, he knows everything Sylvester would know. So, of course, like I just have to believe it's him, even if he's acting strangely, kind of thing. And so, in that aspect, but I still wish they had given Pat a little bit more of like a suspicion, kind of thing to it. But yeah, I have to believe that it's just he wanted him back so much. And, so as usual, Pat ends up being a support character. But I think he works really well as a support character. I really like the way that he helps everybody. Of course, when he goes after Starman on his own, you know, that's the problem. That's where we get the thing where, you know, he ends up being buried alive, and, you know, it's a tad bit worried that something might happen, even though I was pretty sure that he would get out of that. But
Unbelievably climb out of his own grave.
well, okay, so here is the one issue. When they showed how deep that grave was in episode 12, that was very different from how deep it was in episode 13, because they showed it like he was literally 6 feet under
Yeah.
in at episode 12. And so I was like, there's no way he can get out of that on his own. If you're covered by 6 feet of ground, you're not digging your way out before you die. But then they show it in the last episode, and it's just like, oh, he just has like a thin layer of ground over him, so he just has to like burst up and like, oh, I'm good, you know. So it's like, I did have, like, again, the writing in the end and some of the direction and all that kind of stuff at the end, like I felt like they were trying to like pull a fast one, and I wasn't too thrilled with that. But I did like, you know, a lot of what he did in the season. I liked him being a good, strong, like sort of support character for everybody.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Jakeem, Mike, and Cindy, because they're a trio now. I'm sorry, what?
Do we have to?
Yeah.
The Young All-Stars.
Okay.
The Young All-Stars. They're a trio. They are a definite trio now. So oh, come on, Beth. Come on. So all right, Beth, what did you think? What did you think of them?
The two of them chasing after Cindy constantly was just kind of gross.
Completely
after a while.
and totally understandable and fair.
I'll have to take your word for that, sir. But I
mean, I kept shaking my head and going, oh, no, guys, no. I'm sorry. I get it, but I'm sorry. She will never pay you the time of day, but I completely get it.
I was just begging them to stop, and they never stopped.
They weren't doing anything like creepy or anything. They were just like, they wanted her to be like, you know, with them. But like, it wasn't like anything like dirty or anything.
I think their hearts were in the right place. They were just trying to make sure they were okay. She was okay, even though Jakeem definitely had an ulterior motive because he has a giant crush on her.
Yeah.
But I agree. Parts of it were a little cringy. I feel that. I do.
I've contributed all the commentary I should do on this part, so I'm going to step out.
This is completely and totally realistic and understandable for a 14-year-old boy. I get it.
Who looks like he's 19.
That's
no. That's
okay. Across the break, his balls dropped really far. He grew.
The actor Mike or the actor for Jakeem?
Mike.
Yeah, no, I think the actor is like 19
He was like 20 this season. Oh God.
Yeah, but I mean that kind of growth spurt is common in your teens. So I don't know. I didn't feel like it was that unrealistic.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it wasn't like Beverly Hills 90210 when they have bald spots and they're in their 40s and they're supposed to be like 18. You know. I thought both Jakeem and Mike looked, you know, age appropriate. Just like, but here's the thing. I mean, Brett Bassinger is like 23 and she looks 16. So I mean, like, then you can look age appropriate and not be exactly the age.
Some of those actors are 30. 29 or 30. I think Yolanda is.
Yolanda's the oldest, I believe, of them.
I thought the actor who played Cameron, or no, maybe not. Either Cameron or Rick, I can't remember now. One of them is also in their late 20s.
But yeah, I mean, they look fairly age appropriate. Well, no, Rick is the one. Yeah, Rick is. If any of them, Rick is the one that looks like it's like, wait, like, shouldn't you have a job or something? Like you're fairly. Yeah, he looks fairly old compared to the others. But yeah, no, I mean, I think they all look like they could be in high school, other than maybe Rick.
I think they did a good job with makeup and
And maybe Rick was just held
Very
back 3 or 4
strange,
times.
no.
I mean, we don't know.
I think Rick
Probably.
was. I think we're supposed to believe that about Rick.
No.
He is supposed to, I think, be older than the others.
But yeah, okay. So anyway.
Sorry.
Anyway, I totally understand. I totally understand with Cindy being the way she is, and I totally understand with those kids. Like that is, yeah, like, yeah, they would react that way. That's totally understandable. Anyway.
Young teenage boys listening to this podcast, don't do that. Don't learn from this. We understand, but we don't approve.
All that they were, I mean, God, they were just like, they weren't doing anything wrong. Jeez, you're acting like they were like doing something
You're
wrong.
ruining my after-school special announcement. Stop.
They weren't doing anything wrong. It's not like they were doing like what, like peeping in her windows, like, oh, what does she do? You know, like there was nothing wrong. Oh God, it wasn't like that at all. They just had like a puppy dog thing for her. Like it's fine. She would have rejected them and they would have had to get over it and it would have all been okay. It's just a lot of weirdness was going on and so it didn't quite follow the circle. But anyway. All right, so Eric, what do you think about the Young All-Stars?
So when I first saw Seth Green's name on the season, I get so thrown off because my brain's like, wait, wasn't the voice of
Jim Gaffigan,
the Thunderbolt, Pat and well, no, I'm getting there because my brain went, wait, wasn't it Patton Oswalt? And then like, because my brain was convinced it was Patton for some stupid reason, so I start Googling, and then I'm like, no, I'm an idiot. It was Jim Gaffigan. Okay, but then I'm like, okay, now the Seth choice makes even less sense because how are you replacing Jim Gaffigan with Seth Green? They don't even sound alike.
Yeah, no, I saw it in the news before I saw the season, so I knew it was coming. So it didn't surprise me.
It doesn't fit. That's all I'm gonna say there. I love Seth. I think he's great when in the right choices. I mean, he's a fantastic Leonardo in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 2012 series. He's not the Thunderbolt. Nothing about that worked. It took me out of every single scene because I'm like, I'm not saying Jim's voice was perfect as a Thunderbolt, but it was just so jarring every single time. I'm like, Seth, I love you, man, but this isn't working. I don't understand how he got the role.
I just like that the fact that the conversation has turned to Seth Green because he is the poster child for what Beth and I were just talking about of like a 50-year-old guy playing a teenager, you know.
Oh,
Seth Green.
I thought you were going elsewhere with that. I thought you were going to go elsewhere because my brain went, what, you mean in Idle Hands and how he and the Stoner Buddy were kind of, yeah, they were kind of skeevy. Anyway,
oh, no,
a lot of his early teenage roles were pretty skeevy.
No, it's just like he's all like like they made a joke about him like Austin Powers too, where it's like, you know, like he's a guy in like his mid-30s and he's always playing like a 16-year-old kid, you know. So it's just like it's funny. But anyway,
I mean, that's really all I have to add to any and all conversation related to the Young All-Stars.
Oh, okay. Don't want to mention anything about Cindy either because I'm grouping her in.
Oh no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Cindy. She's one of my favorite characters. I think she can be an idiot at moments because, you know, all you have to do is talk to Courtney and, you know, all you're doing is talking to Courtney and Yolanda will shut up because Courtney could just be like, no, she told me this. You settle down, Yolanda. Settle down.
But here's the problem. If we could distill all the trauma and abuse like within this group and like boil it down, like, you know, like it's like this is like a way more per capita trauma and abuse than should like ever exist anywhere, like
than a single person,
right?
Yeah.
Like Cindy is way more trauma and abuse than anyone should have to endure. Rick has way more trauma and abuse. Like Yolanda seems to be more recent. So maybe that's like a little more like, you know, like what might be typical, but it's like so many of these people come from a place. Pat comes from a place of trauma and abuse. He told us about that, you know, this season. It's like all these people, it's like, oh my God, like, you know, like Beth needs to just like hug everybody. Like Beth and Courtney, they just need to go around, give everybody hugs because it's like, I mean, Courtney's had problems like, you know, with the whole deal with her dad and whatever, but at least her life with her mother hasn't been about trauma and abuse. So like, you know, so like Beth and like Courtney seem to have it the healthiest of anybody here. So it's just like, go hug everybody because they all need it. Believe me. Yeah, so I get when Cindy is one of the characters I get when she does dumb things, because she has serious trust issues when her own father is someone that has abused her and made her feel like she was not worth anything unless he his value on her was based on what he could improve about her. So what does that make her think about herself in a default state? Like who she is and everything, and how does that make her feel about trusting people, when all of the people outside of her father in her life were other villains and their kids even. So it's just like, yeah, I get why Cindy has makes bad decisions.
Fair enough. Way to go though, Dragon Queen, way to go. That's all I'll say there.
All right, so just what do you think about our young all-stars?
I don't know that I have much extra to really add to the conversation, other than I did enjoy Jakeem finally embodying the Thunderbolt and like understanding like how it works. Like it's not just about being able to like craft a wish, like, because it's not practical, right? I mean, you can't do something like that in like the heat of the moment where you have to come up with this like ironclad wish that's like 50 pages long or whatever they were trying to do early on. And so I did like that he started to understand that it's the intent behind the wish and that he is the one kind of like in control. I don't know how comics accurate that is, but I do like that they developed his character in that way. And I would have liked to have seen what they did with him in season 4, because I think it would have been more fun and more useful, even if the outcome is a little cringe sometimes with turning the villain into a teddy bear. But
yeah, so you've actually brought me to one of my issues with the season, which is the Thunderbolt itself, which is... So I get why they made it so hard to use, because you shouldn't be able to use it to like against like a boss, quote unquote, character, the main villains, like the really powerful ones. So I had an extreme issue last season when the Thunderbolt was what put the finishing touch on Eclipso. Oh, we turned him into toast. Ha 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 ha. And I was like, well, that was easy. And then this season, we turned the Ultra-Humanite into a plush toy. Well, that was easy. I just feel like I feel like it's such a Deus Ex Machina that for that very reason, it should be made somehow unusable during any kind of final battle. Like, because that makes it way too easy to take bad guys off the board. And instead, that seems like they always make it almost impossible to use during the like non-consequential parts of the season, and then make it the thing that they use at the end. And I'm like, guys, you already did that with Eclipso. You shouldn't be able to do it with the Ultra-Human, like something. I don't know. I had a real problem with that. I also had a problem though with the whole like, oh, we tried it once to figure out who the killer is, and we got a vague answer. And instead of going, hey, wait, remember last time we actually did come up with a very well crafted question, and let's try that instead of just saying like, who is the killer, do like a very well crafted question so that it would give an answer that was irrefutable, like definite answer as to who the killer was. And we did not get, and we didn't get them thinking like that. And I just felt like for the things, I don't know, it seems like they're dumb. And I get what you're saying, like that they started improving on that towards the end, but at the same time it's like, but then you don't want it to be too easy, because then they can just take out the major bad guys without it, and it's just like, I don't know. The Thunderbolt I think is problematic in its very existence, and I don't know the solution, but I feel like that's a problem.
To actually back you up, it's probably just as bad inside of the comic books, like meaning like they run into the same exact issues. Jakeem himself has almost had to go full like Static Shock as a character to be around. Like, I mean, you kind of see it in that scene when he actually like figures out how to play the wish, right? Is he kind of goes a little Static Shock like, and they've kind of had to play on that inside of the comic books in varying degrees and different JSA titles, as well as in the main books. Like he was just used in Batman versus Robin in a really interesting way. But that once again makes them kind of look more static shock than, kid with a magical genie helping him.
Yeah, I do like Cindy. She's definitely a type. She's definitely the type that 14-year-old boys would fall in love with and then get their hearts broken by. Like that to me, that makes total sense. I did feel like the whole like, oh no, I'm going through this horrible transformation, and it was just like a scale mail sleeve that you can like buy at the store and like put on,
Hot Topic sleeve.
It looked really bad. Like it's just like, this looks so fake, like I've seen people, I know someone that actually makes like that kind of stuff, like that kind of costuming that people can put on to give them that sort of like, scale mail armor sort of look. And that's all it looked like. It looked like armor that she had put on that was sort of like dragon scale, like, textured, like not like, oh, I'm actually transforming into something, kind of thing. So and I know they don't have the budget they had in season 1, but still, it's like, guys, come on, you couldn't do any better than this. I mean, really.
Call up a cosplayer. Seriously.
Right.
They could do so much better.
Oh yeah, I didn't feel like that, like really sold like, oh, horrific transformation, what shall I do? But yeah, no, I mean, and despite myself, I like Cindy as a character. I didn't think that I would ever get there because, unlike the Croc, she's not very charismatic in that sort of sense. But they've sold me on the idea that Cindy wants to change, which I didn't think. I thought going into the season, like the whole like I want to join the JSA thing would be a ploy, and they've sold me that this is actually coming from a legitimate place. And I understand why, though, when everybody's pushing against her, that she goes into reclusive, like, because again, like she's not been able to trust anyone ever. So why, when these people that she thought maybe would, but then they're like kind of turning on her, like why would she ever believe anything would go different? So I think they've done a good job, like actually like portraying Cindy as like a troubled kid, rather than, a villain or a hero or anything. I mean, Cindy's just a troubled kid and she wanted things to go differently. And, for me, the most unbelievable part was that she was like, I'll join, but only if Mike and Jakeem join too. I was like, no. I'm sorry, no. I don't think so. That's a little too altruistic, but okay. They went there. But yeah. I was like, yeah, no. But all right, so villains. We still have to talk about Ultra-Humanite and Icicle in this season. So Eric, start us off. What do you think about the return of Icicle and the depiction of the Ultra-Humanite in this? And I mean, Dragon King, you can talk about too if there's anything, but I don't feel like they gave him much to really work with like this season. But if you want to talk about Dragon King.
No, not really. There's
Okay.
nothing to talk about with Dragon King.
Okay.
Other than the fact that, she's Dragon Queen now.
Right.
And she deserves that title. She kicked her. I mean, she got help, but she kicked her dad's butt while he was in a giant mutated ape. So, anyways, what was I gonna say? I mean, he was there when it comes to Icicle, but I mean, if you wanted to talk about the real villain of that family, hi Lily, how's it going? You're kind of a nut job, huh?
Just a little
Jesus,
bit.
that woman is terrifying. And it was funny at the start of the season. You think that about both grandparents, but at the end of the day, you kind of want to give Grandpa McCat a hug as opposed to Lily, who you kind of want to be like, yeah, justice for the teacher was definitely served by the end of the season, thankfully. Right. But that poor teacher, man, did not deserve to go out like that. That poor guy. Yeah. But man, he is something else. That's all I can say there. I mean, we understand where Icicle gets it from now, because it definitely wasn't the father. It was full on the mother. Jesus, she is everything about that woman throughout that whole season. I'm like, yeah, I can see it now, because there's something unhinged there.
Mm-hmm.
Versus Grandpa McCat, that once again, it's just like you want to apologize for humanity and how they've treated his family's heritage. Versus Lily, that you're just like, okay, how fast can we get that car to hit her?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
no, good
basically
point
already-
to bring them up too. No, I meant to say them too, and I forgot to. So yes, I'm glad you brought them up.
And we basically talked about Ultra-Humanite with Sylvester. I mean, especially I had, sadly, with my full watch along this last week and a half, I had that spoiler right on the table for me before I even jumped into the season.
Oh.
But second I heard his name thrown out, I would have been able to be like, okay, that's where they're going with this, because of, like I said, the stories that I know from the Jeff Johns first comic book run, and knowing what I knew, I could have pieced it together. So it didn't really surprise me to be like, oh, that's what they're doing with the Ultra-Humanite. But I mean, at the end of the day, the darkest thing that they did with him, outside of obviously everything he was doing as Sylvester, was the fact that they kept Sylvester's head in that jar, reliving, opening his head over and over and over again. That's dark.
Yeah,
That's
well, and
super
Beth
dark.
said like any
That's rough.
Sylvester they get back after this won't be the right Sylvester either, because he'll have
Yeah.
been so traumatized by reliving that over and over again that I get like again, I don't think they'll be like a fully restored like Sylvester, because that's also super trauma, you know. So like it's just another traumatized character to bring in.
Woohoo!
The thing to wrap it up before you jump to Jessica or Beth is, I would say the thing I want to give Icicle, and I mean it probably goes to how awesome his actor is in general, is yes, while we as the viewers knew he had already killed the Crocs in the way that he did, especially when he has this conversation with Courtney, you wanted to believe that dude. You wanted to believe that he honestly wanted to change before we saw him with Dragon King and Ultra-Humanite's body at the very end. You wanted to believe he was serious, and then you get to that last scene and you go, oh, come on, writers. You couldn't have thrown the curveball. You couldn't have stuck the landing there. Come on.
Yeah, Neil Jackson is a very charismatic actor. I've seen him in other
yes.
things, and he's very good. You know, so yeah, I mean, he definitely sold the performance, but I figured it was a performance he was giving, you know, Courtney, but you know, especially since we had seen him kill the Crocs, and he was like, oh, it was an accident in self-defense or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, except that like you baited them down there, so I don't buy that for a second.
That was like a total lie.
Yeah, but I get it. Yeah, it was a very convincing performance. But yeah, Jess, what did you think about our villains this season?
I did not see the reveal with the Ultra-Humanite coming at all. Until I didn't pin it on Sylvester. I actually for a moment thought that it was going to be Icicle, when you have that whole like mansion scene with like Pat going through, and then you get the reveal that it pretty much has to be Sylvester. And so I didn't see that coming at all. So, and since I didn't have that spoiler, we were watching in real time. And so I think would completely reframe how I watched the first majority of that season. Now I haven't gone back to rewatch it, but I do want to do that because I think it will change a lot of the things that I was having issues with that may have like distracted me from maybe like the way that some of the episodes were going, like with his behavior, just because it did feel like so out of character. But now knowing that it's supposed to be out of character, I feel like I could watch that a little more easily. And then the reveal with Icicle, I have been wanting this since the end of season 1. I have been wanting him to come back. I love Neil Jackson. I love his portrayal of this character. He does such a good job with it, and I just like loved every minute of it. As soon as he was coming back, I was like, yes. I was super sad that it was at the demise of the Crocs, but I was very, very happy that we got him back. Who else? Oh, the Grandsicles, as we tended to call them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I was not expecting Granny to be so ruthless as she was. I'm very glad we got closure on the teacher, because I was really worried that was a thread they were just going to leave dangling. because it wasn't really like super important to the plot. But since they put it out there, it's like you need to kind of resolve that. So I was glad that we got some resolution on that people, you know, realized he was missing, and there was like a whole vigil and like stuff actually going on. But I just, wow, yeah, I echo all of Eric's comments about her, like getting to see her just in that way, and just that like raw, I don't even know what you call that, hatred, I guess. I was like, wow, okay, now I totally understand how Jordan like is the way that he is. And I don't know how he managed to turn out to be like a halfway decent dad in season 1 and like avoid totally screwing up Cameron. I don't know how that's happened. But I was here for it. I was not expecting Grandpa Icicle to be more of a sympathetic character, but I did end up just kind of feeling bad for him in the end. So pretty much it.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they had the extra time in the season if they had somehow revealed that like she had helped the mother's death move along faster. Honestly, like it wouldn't have surprised me because of the whole, you know, forcing Cameron to give up art and, you know, like having to stay focused on family. It felt like, you know, like the second the mother had pretty much got in the way of whatever Jordan wanted to do, like all of that screams that Lily might have had something connected to her death, even though I forgot what we know about the mother's death. I think it was like cancer, wasn't it, or something like that? But I feel like
it was
she
cancer,
probably
yeah.
helped move it along quicker.
Ooh,
It wouldn't surprise me.
wouldn't surprise me either. Look it
Beth?
up.
I have one question about the Grand Sickles, which I love that name, by the way, so I'm totally taking it. And I'm going to address this to Eric because he's got more of the lore under his belt.
Oh, they're not in the comics.
Oh, dang it. Okay.
Sorry. They're brand new characters.
Okay, I don't fully remember the story of their family heritage. Can someone help me fill in the
They're
gaps?
descended from frost giants.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Both of them?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Do you see where
It's
I'm
like
going
a
with this?
Jotunheim Loki type of thing.
I don't think it's a single bloodline.
Yeah,
but
I don't think it's
yes.
just one frost giant intermarried
They
with
really
humans,
didn't
and
make
then
that clear. Because when they both have ice powers and they say, oh, it's been passed down the family through generations, I'm like, okay, so how badly inbred are you?
I mean, it is a fair question. They didn't make it super obvious.
That was stuck in my head ever since they explained that. And I was like, I can't look at these people without having like hives, full body hives. It was freaking me out.
Maybe it was more than one frost giant intermarried with a human, and they're descended from different frost giants.
Still not enough frost giants.
It might be similar to the Santa Claus Viking lore, you know what I mean? Like especially with that overall continent and part of the world, you know, like Vikings and like in that whole situation, like it might be closer to that whole area. I don't think it's an incest thing. I hope to God it's not an incest thing.
I don't think it was supposed to be, and I think they tried to maybe give us a little bit of that with the whole story, with the picture of like the pyre and how they were like basically like burning their ancestors at the stake once they figured out that they were different. So I think they were trying to show us that it was like maybe like a whole village, or I mean, I know that's even still small, but at least it's not like a single bloodline. But I did get the impression that perhaps that these two were like the last remaining ones aside from like Jordan and Cameron.
Okay. That's still, I couldn't get that out of my head after they said that, and it really threw me. But like, yeah, she is crazy lady. And that's all I can really say because everyone else has pretty much nailed it. I would not want to be in the same room as that woman. Yeah, they kind of sold the show on the whole villain thing for me.
Yeah, I've been bringing up my problems with the season as we've been going, and I just had an extreme problem with the whole scenario here. Because first of all right, so I guess we're supposed to believe that that Starman's the one who put all the cameras everywhere. But it's like, okay, so Courtney and her family did go on vacation, so he did have access to the house. But he was able to somehow put the cameras in, like embedded in walls and stuff seamlessly. So he was able to repair everything and do all that. But then also to go to the school, to go to the Croc's house, to go to like every place that we saw that there were cameras, nobody noticed this guy coming in, tearing out walls, like putting cameras in, repairing it all so that nobody could there's a problem there. And
There
Hey,
is.
Dragon King probably still had some of his Jawas hanging around.
Maybe. I don't
maybe,
know.
but again, nobody noticed them coming into like a school and like tearing walls out and stuff. I don't know. Because I thought like once we know who the killer is, we'll see how they put the cameras in. But no, we didn't explain that at all, and nor does him having the staff really explain being able to like put cameras in walls. So like that, like none of that like made any sense, and they didn't bother to explain it. And it just felt like, again, like they were very lazy in the writing to like not explain, because like, and normally in a murder mystery, when you get to the last episode or when you get to the end of the mystery, they explain everything that happened, and you figure out like, oh, this is why that happened here, and this happened here, and this is, that's how it all flowed, and okay, I see all the evidence now, and now it makes sense. And it was just like there were so many things that they didn't explain at the end of this. And the plan, when I heard the plan, it was just like, so the plan is just to have basically your own Starman. Like that's the plan. Like that's what all of this was for. And
it would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids.
And you went about it the slowest possible way because remember, like Jordan's whole story is it took him all this time to pull himself back together. But we see the flashback that before Starman ever even showed up, he had already pulled himself back together. He's just walking around fine.
Yeah, I
it's like, why did he wait all this time? That wasn't really explained. And like, how did they get the Ultra-Humanite? Because they said like the Ultra-Humanite also hated the ISA. They hated the JSA and the ISA. And it's like, so how did they recruit him? So because we're supposed to believe then, because this is before Starman shows up, that this is like right after season 1 that they get the Ultra-Humanite to help them. And it's like, so how did they recruit him? Like, what did they do? We don't explain any of that either. And
no.
And it just seemed like, why are we doing it like this? And then you're telling Cameron like, oh, like I'm all about peace and this is all about peace and everything. But it's like, but of course, like you had to know that this would all have to end in you killing everybody. So why did you even try to convince Cameron it was all about peace? Because you knew that you were going to have to end up killing everybody. Why did you just kill everybody without telling Cameron you were back and then show up? Which would have been a much smarter way for him to go about doing this while still convincing Cameron that he's a good guy. Because if they were all dead and there's nobody there to give him a story other than, him and the grandparents, well then, okay, then they can just give Cameron whatever story they want and say like, this is what happened. And so I don't like the whole thing. Like none of it made sense to me. Like his plan, why he did it the way he did it, why he did it so slowly, how he did it. All of that stuff, I just felt like, and so I just felt so let down by the villains and the plans and all of that. It was just frustrating. From in hindsight, I was a lot more invested in it when I thought there was going to be like an awesome answer at the end of it. Like so going through the season, I was really excited, and then in the end, I felt really let down. But yeah, like Neil Jackson, like I said, great actor. I don't think he really got enough this season. Like, yeah, he came back and he got a couple of really good like scenes and lines, but like he's barely in it really. And so there's not a whole lot there. And then of course he's killed off at the end, so we were never going to get much with him. Ultra-Humanite, obviously had the best because he was actually in Starman's body through the whole thing. And some of that was really good, and some of like the misdirection and everything that he was doing was really good. But as I mentioned, there are parts of that don't work for me now in hindsight, which is a problem. And Dragon King, for the life of me, I don't know why he gave up like unkillable lizard body for big ape body. Yeah, it might be stronger, but you were in an unkillable lizard body. Like, why is unkillable like bad? Like, why did you want something else? Like, I didn't understand that. It was just to throw misdirection in by the writers, but like I didn't get why he would make that choice. It just seemed like a bad choice to me.
He probably figured that the girls would want to cuddle him more if he was an ape rather than a lizard man.
And while everybody has been praising the grandparents, and I gotta agree, that mom is scary. The grandma, she is, yeah. Like, she's asking, like, he's bringing out, like, snacks for, like, Pat and Barbara, and she's like, did you poison them? He's like, no. And she's like, why not? Why did you serve it at all if you're not gonna poison them? Stuff like that.
She was unhinged.
Yeah, she was unhinged and she was scary. I did feel like, though, because they always made it seem like that she at least loved him, her husband. But then at the end, when she's like, well, then just die, you fool. When he's like, no, we should end this. We shouldn't keep doing this. I was just like, okay, that's a bit much, because it's like, you can be a bad person and disagree with your spouse, and that doesn't mean you want them to die. Like, I don't know. It's like, because she looked like really, like, actually, like, upset when she thought that they had killed him, like when he had the heart attack and he like fell down, and she seemed really upset. So I didn't get the whole, like, again, it just seemed like bad writing in that last episode where it's just like, well, then just die, you fool. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit much, because I could see her being mad at him and being like, go away and just let me handle it or whatever, but like just being like, just die, you fool, just seemed like a bit much. And the whole thing with the car falling just also just seemed like a little too convenient, but that's, yeah. Anyway. But yeah, I think that's pretty much, I mean, we covered a lot about season 3 here. I mean, I guess the only other question that I would ask is, well, I guess it's, I'll ask 2 questions on top of each other, and let's go pretty quick because it doesn't have a lot of comment. Like, how do you feel about the ending, like the last scene where we jump forward in the future? We talked about it a little bit, but I don't think everybody like really got to say. And do, like, if Jeff Johns could have a conversation with James Gunn and convince him that Stargirl, like should somehow be incorporated into the new DCU, do you think that they should do that? So let's start with you, Jess.
Well, I gave most of my thoughts on the final scene, so I can be pretty quick. I think if they had the chance to bring them into the DCU, I think I would like it to continue. Like, do you mean continue as a TV show, or like
in any fashion, bringing back these characters, but these actors, however James Gunn would want to use it, like incorporate it in somehow. It doesn't have to be a show. It could be a movie. It could be as guests on somebody else's show. Whatever.
I gotcha. I think it would be a nice touch, personally. I mean, I have loved the characters. I think the only reason that the season got canceled was just because of everything going on behind the scenes. I don't think there was really any like fault with the show. It hit its normal kind of like growing pains and like growing issues. I mean, the way that they do the finales is a bit different, and I know a lot of people don't like that structure. They don't like things wrapped up in a neat little bow. They don't like the first half of the finale to be the battle and the second half to be all the closure aspects. I personally like that, but I know a lot of people don't. But I think that if they could at least keep Breck around and give her some sort of role, I think that would be just a nice nod and a nice touch.
Okay. Eric?
So obviously I loved that last scene, especially as the huge Starman, James Robinson, Tony Harris fan that I am, because the Shade did start off as a Flash villain, and his and Jay's relationship perfectly summed up right there. You can see how easily those two play off of each other. It's fantastic. I love everything about it, because every single scene that the Shade is in the show is fantastic. Anyways, when talking about the continuation, so what I do know for a fact is Courtney will be showing up apparently on the train wreck that is Titans at some point in the season, but that is all we know as of this moment. What I would love to see happen is we know, or at least have a good hunch, that basically what will survive from Black Adam, for one we know, is going to be some form of the Justice Society. Basically anything that connects to any of James' already existing projects in some form, or, has a connection to the projects that he's done in DC, is going to continue on. So there's a good point that we'll at least see Aldous Hodge as Hawkman again, and I would love to see him bounce off of this iteration of the Justice Society, because I feel like Aldous, as both an actor and as his version of Hawkman, would fit in perfectly with this subset of characters. I mean, he could bring along the other members that are still around as of the end of that film, but well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Because I mean, that would be a version of Atom Smasher, even though we had Damage teased. So we'd see if Atom Smasher would get along with this iteration of the team too. But I could see some sort of hybrid team forming if there is some sort of Justice Society project that will be announced in James Gunn's era of DC films. I have hope. Whether or not it will be the case is a whole nother matter, but I do have hope there. Really hope that we see some iteration of the Justice Society moving forward again. I hope so. If it can't be named Stargirl, name it the Justice Society. Let's do this. Come on, James Gunn. Don't disappoint us.
Yeah, I read somewhere, and I don't remember if it was a rumor site or whatever, but I read somewhere that Gunn was going to post at least something about his plan, like definitively about his plans on the 6th of January. So we're just a few days away from like getting whatever, and it might just be a couple of things. Like he might, because he didn't, you know, like it doesn't. He's said before that what he shares at the beginning of the year will be a few things. You know, he said that earlier. Like I will share a few things sometime in the new year. So that he's working on. So we know one of those things is a Superman project. That's the only one that he's given a definitive. He is working on a Superman
that he's writing.
Right.
That's all we know about it, though, is he's writing. We don't know who's we don't know who's directing.
Right.
We don't know who's starring. We don't know any other than
right. But what I'm saying is that's the only project beyond 2020, because the 2023 movies have already been announced. Beyond 2023, we just know at some point, whether it's 2024, 2025, whatever, there will be a Superman movie. And that's the only thing we know. But yeah. Oh, and the other thing though is the Stargirl thing is just a cameo in Titans. That has been confirmed.
Okay. I didn't know if it was 100%.
I think there's going to be a scene of some kind where there's going to be visions of other worlds, and they're going to show Stargirl as one of those like visions of other worlds, you know, that exist out there. So they will be confirming a multiversal connection to Stargirl, but she won't be like in the same reality with the Titans.
Which is weird. Sorry, before we completely get off track, which is weird because I thought I remembered hearing them say that, or confirming that Titans, Stargirl, and Doom Patrol all existed on the same world.
No. That's actually, they all exist on 3 separate worlds, actually, because that was in the end of the Crisis on Infinite Earths that was on the CW. It actually gives the numbers for each world. Like Stargirl's on Earth 2, Titans, I want to say, is Earth 9, and Doom Patrol, I think, is like Earth 27. I think that's what they said anyway.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So yeah, they're
I was
each
misremembering.
right, because like people will be like, why did they put Titans and Doom Patrol on separate Earths when like they had the Doom Patrol on Titans? But I was like, yeah, but it was a different Doom Patrol. Like there were different actors involved and everything. So,
they had a worse actor as the chief.
Right. So I'm like, yeah. So like they're just like with everybody, sometimes there are doppelgangers on another Earth, but like that's not the same group of Titans. Like Beast Boy was never a member of the Doom Patrol that's in the actual Doom Patrol show. You know, like that's a different Doom Patrol. But anyway.
Sorry to side tangent.
That's fine. That's fine. It's just one of those things to get me annoyed because I hear that question all the time, and I'm like, no, this isn't that hard. Why are you making this difficult? There can be doppelgangers. Because the struggle. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So Beth, what do you think about the last scene? And would you like to see the Stargirl characters continue?
Short answer: yes. I really enjoyed that last scene. It had that kind of rosy glow of a future where you know everything turned out okay. It's just full of warm fuzzy feelings. You know that's the kind of scene that's good to show in a finale. I think, especially one like this where it is sadly it is the end of the show. Sad face. But I would absolutely love if James Gunn could pick this up and do something with it, and in a good way. I really do feel like if there wasn't like the politics behind the scenes of DC and CW and all this, I really do think that Stargirl would continue on and have more seasons. Yes, plural seasons, because that's the caliber of the characters and just how everyone plays off of each other. It's just good.
Yeah, so many networks now don't want to do scripted TV. They want to just either buy syndicated stuff that's been made by others, and they want to do reality stuff. Like, it's like, they don't, and that's the thing. Like, the next star doesn't want to do scripted television, and so I'm worried about all the things that we watch, which isn't much anymore on the CW. It's just Superman and Lois and Kung Fu are the only two left that we actually watch. So well, we'll see if those make the cut, but it doesn't. Prognosis is not good, but
Sadly, no.
Yeah, I like the last scene. The Shade's always great. Like I said, John Wesley Shipp, it's always like whenever he's on screen, it's just like, oh wow, like the adult is here, Right? It's just like on the Flash, which obviously has a much bigger gulf between Shipp and everybody else than this show does. But it's just like every time Jay Garrick is there, it's just like, thank you. The adult is in the room now, and we can all just look to him looking all like heroic and everything, and just be like, oh, this is what a superhero is supposed to be. All right. But yeah, it was a nice little coda. Beth knows me, and she knows that I prefer my futures dark and gritty, because I feel like that always gives you something to strive against, rather than like having a nice bright future where it's like, oh well, why does anybody put in any effort? Because the future's nice. But
no, they put in the effort, and that's why it's nice.
I know it's a different way of looking at it, but I've always preferred like X-Men, where it's like the future is awful, and that means we have to work super hard to like make sure it doesn't happen.
I think we needed that closure, knowing that it's a final season, which is why I'm kind of adamant that had they not been the final season, that scene shouldn't have been there. But that's just my personal taste.
Right. But yeah, no, I love those two characters, and so it was good to see them interacting, and that be kind of like our coda, on things. Yeah, and I definitely would love, even if, because like Gunn has said, like he's gonna like embrace the multiverse with his new DC. And so it's like, all right, then why not? Like, even if Stargirl in this iteration isn't part of like your Prime universe, whatever you're gonna set most of your content in, why couldn't we like continue this like as a movie or a show or something, like even a mini series, then just say, well, it takes place on another Earth, and as long as you label it as this is an Elseworlds or whatever they're going to call it, tale of the DC universe, like let them do it. Because I mean, the biggest factor there, I think, is just how much is Discovery willing to spend on, and how many projects can they have going at one time, kind of thing. Because that's the real problem, is they seem very tight-fisted with the cash. So it's like, okay, they said James Gunn can like control everything, but it's like, how many projects can he have going at one time? And then that becomes a question of then which projects would he greenlight? I mean, obviously they're not going to focus on Elseworlds. They're going to want to focus on things that are in their new like Prime universe, and make sure that all that gets the most content, and then might pepper in some like alternative kind of stuff. So
any company that's going to buy out some kind of comic franchise for like visual media, the answer to the question how many projects they can have is as many as they want.
Well, that should be. I mean, this is weird because it's Discovery, which is like a documentary network, bought Warner Brothers.
Right.
How that could even happen.
There's also a brand new Stargirl miniseries that is currently on issue 2, as well as a brand new Justice Society of America comic book ongoing that is in the second issue also, as of next week after, something like that. It just started. So if worst comes to worst, people pick up, they see a surge in the original, back issues, or it would be the trades that they see surging, like that. People pick up trades of the Jeff Johns run, or they pick up this new ongoing. They see the sales start to jump a little bit. I am certain that they'd be like, "Hey, Gunn, you got a JSA project in the works you can push forward." It's really all that needs to be done. These people see surges in their numbers, they get a project going. It's that easy nowadays.
I'm more hopeful about this than any other DC property that's been going on, just because of the fact that Jeff Johns is such a name and does have such clout, that he might, he's probably one of the people that James Gunn is meeting with anyway, just because he's helped script so many of the movies and shows and everything. So, and this is obviously his baby because, Courtney is based off of his sister. And so like all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not hopeful about any other thing, any other movie or any other show that existed prior to this, like getting any kind of, because some people have been like, well, it would be nice if they let them do just like an Arrowverse series on HBO Max and let them like do like kind of like an anthology series. And yeah, that would be nice. But I don't see Gunn greenlighting that. I don't see that being like a thing he wants to focus on of, let's like do Tales of the Arrowverse or whatever and just like, alternate between different, characters from the Arrowverse that didn't get like their proper send-offs or whatever. I don't see that. But I could see Johns going in and going like, look, like Stargirl, I think has, legs still. And I think that, we were just shut down because of all this stuff going on, with DC and with Warner and with CW and, like, can we do something to like work this into what you're doing? And so I'm just hoping, and I feel like there's at least some small chance with this show. Not like if Superman Lois goes, it's gone. Because they're going to have their new Superman, and I don't think they're going to worry about trying to do an alternate Tyler Hoechlin Superman as much as I love him.
They're gonna kill it. I love him too. They're gonna kill it. It's as good as dead.
I think there might be there's a small chance of a fourth season just because it could squeak in before any of the new content takes place, and they might be like, okay, that's fine because it'll squeak in beforehand. But yeah, I think after that it's done. But anyway. Guys, thank you. This was a lot of fun. It's good talking about this show, giving it a send off. Oh my God, yeah, we talked longer than I thought we would about this. Now that I'm looking at the clock, so I see Jess rubbing her eyes, and I'm. You were the one who was like, it can be later, and I'm like, okay.
No, it can. I don't mind starting late. I didn't say I wouldn't show signs of fatigue. Okay. I just said that I would be here and ready to talk.
All right, well, let's say our goodbyes now. Let people know where they can find us. So let us start with you, Jess.
Sure. So you can find me over on the Tomorrow's Legends podcast. We are currently only covering Superman and Lois, but if you loved Legends of Tomorrow, or if you really love Stargirl and want the blow by blow of each week, we do more in-depth analysis. So you can head on over to the website. It's supposed to be tomorrowslegends.ca. It should redirect to our actual podcast page, but you can just pop it into Google or anywhere you listen to podcasts, and you will find us there. TBD on our future content after Superman and Lois ends. But we are planning some stuff going on over there. So,
all right, and Eric.
Hello and goodbye, internets. You can obviously find all of my stuff in the show notes down below or wherever they are, depending on what platform you're listening to this on. I am on the Wax podcast, the audio edition, which hopefully will return one day, when free time exists. And New Comic Day should hopefully be back on schedule in the new year very soon. That's just a matter of writing scripts and getting them to the awesome artists that I have the chance to work with. And yeah, like I said, wherever else I'm on the internet, you can easily find in the show notes because he's awesome like that. Goodbye, internet.
Yeah, so just click on Eric's name in the episode description, and it will bring you to something that has all his stuff on his bio, which has all his stuff on it. Because the show notes I reserve for things that are just episode specific, but your names are all clickable when they show up in the episode, and that brings you to like links to all your stuff. So, all right, but Beth, say your goodbyes and let people know where they can find you.
Well, we're going to have to add a link to my bio because I made something last night. I have a new thing on Tumblr for my upcoming webcomic, and it's called Crystal Forged Comics. So I literally made it like 20 hours ago, so there's nothing on it whatsoever. But hopefully, maybe by the time this podcast is released, there may be a page or two. So we will see.
All right. Well, Jess, Eric, and Beth, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
you
for
having us.
So that's it for Stargirl, but that doesn't need to be the end for our discussion of DC stuff. Beth and I are currently watching the Superman movies with Christopher Reeves, and we're going to bundle Superman Returns in with that. So you can continue to watch this space to see when we do a podcast about that. But I am curious, what other DC media topics would you like us to talk about while we're waiting for James Gunn's Superman to come, or I suppose even Creature Commandos, and for that whole new era to start? So you can let us know in a variety of different ways. One way is to email us at everything@42cast.com. Another way is to go to our website, 42cast.com, and leave a comment on any of the episodes there. You can go to facebook.com, or you can go to X or Instagram and comment at 42cast, and we will see your posts there as well. You can let us know how we're doing also, and one of the ways you can do that is by leaving us a review. Apple Podcasts is a great place to leave a review if you have an account there, because the more reviews we get, the more we show up on searches. And I know a lot more of you are listening than we've had reviews. So again, if you have an Apple account, please do leave us a review, because we would really love to get the show out there into the broader audience, to more people's devices. So please help us with that. I also want to let you know about the ESO Network Patreon. That's a place where you can help all the shows on the network. There are different tiers that give you access to either early episodes of some shows, exclusive episodes of some shows, or even a whole exclusive ESO Network podcast that our board of directors does. So again, that's patreon.com/ESO Network. And if you can contribute any funds, we would greatly appreciate it. I still do hope to get time streams and Legendary Forces back. I'm just going to keep saying that, because the more I say it, hopefully the more it's going to filter through, and I will devote the time to it. My new job is taking a lot more of my time than my old job did. And of course, everything since COVID lockdown has ended has been more hectic and been more difficult to get things done. But I still definitely want to get at least the episodes we've already recorded of both shows. Definitely want to kick time streams back off as soon as I can. Legendary Forces might be a bit harder because all of my co-hosts are now busy with their own projects. So if it does come back, I expect it will be greatly revised if it comes back at all. But I definitely want to get the episodes out there that we've already recorded. Same with time streams. Then it's just a matter of just getting all the pieces to click together there, because it's enough work to get the 42 cast out every week. And I definitely want to keep that going, because this is the show that allows me to talk about anything that I want to, including Star Wars and Doctor Who. But if you want to go and listen to what we've done already, Time Streams is a show where Juliet and I talk about Doctor Who from the beginning, and Legendary Forces is a show where Juliet and I, plus Ashley, Joe, and Corey, are talking about Star Wars media from the beginning. So a lot of deep dive, deep cut stuff, the early novels, talking about before the Thrawn trilogy, the early comic books, all of that kind of stuff. So again, that's Legendary Forces, and Time Streams is the Doctor Who one. Beth and I have started watching Ahsoka. I kind of laughed out loud towards the beginning because I swear that they reused a set from the Willow TV show. Which, I mean, Disney's saving money, so, that's fair. But the ruined city that Ahsoka is in that first episode is just like the ruined city that was in the Willow TV show. Like, they just colored it differently, but it's the same set. But anyway, it was very stark how similar they were. So anyway, so we're watching that. Not sure if we're going to do the Acolyte right away after Ahsoka. Of course, we were watching Clone Wars and Rebels to get up to where we could watch Ahsoka, so we had the proper context for her, but don't know where we're going to go with that. There are other shows that we could watch before we get to the Acolyte, so we might take a Star Wars break for a little bit, but just keep watching this space and I'll let you know. All right, nothing new to report with con news. I'll be at Chicago TARDIS. Probably won't do any cons next year except possibly Chicago TARDIS 2025, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for now, Chicago TARDIS 2024 is my last scheduled con. So if you are planning on going to that con and you hear my voice, feel free to come up and let me know you listen to the 42 cast. People have done it in the past, and I definitely love hearing from people who listen to the show. So if you're around, just definitely let me know that you listen to the show. I'd love your feedback. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Join us back next week when Tom Hopper will not be joining us. And until then, this is Nathan, signing off. You have been listening to the 42 Cast, copyright 2023. Got a question for the ultimate answer? contact us at everything@42cast.com. Theme music is Sharper Swords by Brandon Ellis. Check out more of his work at www.cityfires.com. The 42cast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.